千年的天灾止息之后，生灵尽灭，万物凋敝。一种诡异的黑色泥浆悄然蔓延，逐渐侵蚀每一寸土地。幸存的人类徘徊在文明的废墟之中，苟延残喘，惶惶终日。他们彼此争夺领地、食物，为远离那些从泥浆之中诞生的怪物而四处躲藏。人们仓皇逃窜，不约而同地涌向人类最后的城市——海温斯威尔。
Hey, what's up, comrades? We're here to talk about AI Limit, which is a Soulsborne style game made by this Chinese company, and it's pretty good. Yeah, I really got no complaints about it. It was pretty fun. There was like one boss that was like a real asshole, and I was like, kind of broke me a little bit. But we'll get to that when we get there. So, the game starts off, and we get, in the dark future, the world has completely collapsed. Mud covers everything. And then the monsters come from mud. And that many are trying to escape the cataclysmic events by traveling to Heavenswell, the last bastion of hope. And then our character, I'm just going to call him us, so then we wake up in the mud. We're a figure in shredded robes, and then our left hand is red. Other than that, we're like an anime girl. Yay! My favorite. I love it. I love every second of it. Not super anime, more like Chinese anime. If you know, you know. So we move through the sword, we pick up a sword, and learn about sync rates. So one of the unique mechanics about this game is that as you have a sync rate, and as the sync rate gets lower, you do less damage. So if you can get it up into like higher levels, and there's even like little colors that kind of like help you understand like how much more damage or how much like effectiveness your sync rate up is going. And then also later on when we get like quote unquote spells, they call them spells in this game. So I guess there are spells. There's a lot of like mystery to this game. That like the game seems pretty straightforward when you're like going through the story and everything. Like you can kind of like understand things, talking to NPCs and whatnot. But some of the stuff I'm still kind of like, I feel like I missed something. Like it's not like Dark Souls level, where like if you're not reading like every item that people drop and like killing NPCs that you would otherwise leave alive to like find out more about their story, you're going to be completely confused. Fucking Dark Souls. But there are times where I was like, wait, I don't understand. What is this? But it's definitely. One of the other issues, or one of the other things about this game that makes it kind of unique is there's no stamina. And I was trying to remember, there's some other games that don't have like a stamina bar too. I can't remember if Liza P did, to be completely honest. But I like it better because I feel like it opens up more stuff. The stamina bar can be very poorly implemented. In the From Software games, it is implemented expertly. And so, although sometimes it can be annoying because I need to get good, at the same time, I never feel like it's unfair because the game is made around the understanding that the stamina bar like exists and you have to do things to like manage that. So, but this game has a lot of other stuff to manage, like I said, with the sync rate bar and whatnot. All right, where were we? So then we fight around and we kill these like void creatures. I think they're called void creatures, but they're kind of like dark creatures. They're the ones that like come from the mud. And then we get like little tutorial pops up like, oh, this is how you attack, this is how you do this is how you do that. And the game just starts off and all you can really do is dodge and attack, right? And as the game like does this interesting thing where you eventually like unlock more stuff, and as you unlock those things, like a parry, like a dodge, or not dodge, a parry, well there's like a lightning dodge which will do damage, there's a shield, and then there's a thing where you can like damage yourself to do more damage over time by like infecting yourself or whatnot. And those, you can only choose one of those. So you can't like parry and block. You can parry and then you have to switch to like the block mode or whatever. And I used the parry mode almost the whole game because I feel like it was it's a little broken. Because when you parry, it's like you're backstabbing somebody. It creates like a pause. So it's like parry in like Bloodborne or like Dark Souls games generally, right? But I found it to be super effective. Kind of like Mortal Shell, where it's also extremely effective. And Mortal Shell has that the break mode too, which is really fun. Okay, these games are fucking awesome. Like, Like Soulsborne, I have not played a game in like this genre, and I haven't played all of them, but I haven't played a game in this genre that wasn't like a delight to play. And there's not a lot of them, and I feel like there's like a lot of good, unique spins to this stuff, whether it's like the atmosphere or like the combat or like little things you can do or like little additions. And even when it's like very basic level, like Liza P, where you essentially have like spells, which are like your hand stuff, and then you have like your attacks. And then there's, what's the other thing? Oh, you get like the cube and whatnot. It's still like, it adds enough of like a flavor that I feel like I'm playing something different, right? So it's very good. So eventually we find this scary looking robot, and it's like our first boss. And this is one of those bosses that becomes like a regular enemy later on. But at first it was like, oh shit, this thing's like shooting lasers and crazy stuff. So we dodge out of the way, kill that. Actually, first we watch it fight. And this is another fun mechanism in this game that comes up a lot. Is like there's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 5 factions, because you're like the 5th faction. Technically, there's 2 factions, but there's like 5 different groups of like monsters, and they will fight each other. And a couple of times, I like led monsters into other monsters to like fight themselves, because I don't want to deal with their bullshit. And part of it is just like sometimes you fight these bosses, and later on you fight them like again, but there's like more of them, or there's like with other things, and it's like I don't want to deal with this bullshit. And like in this other room, there's like another kind of like mini boss character and so I can just like get them teamed up, and they will like beat the shit out of each other, and then I can just like hack at them a little bit behind, or like just kind of watch and wait, which is fun. I love that you can do that. It's like an extra layer of things. So once he kills like the void monster, he starts attacking us. So we destroy it, and then we get his gun, and this is our first spell. It's a railgun, and I use this the entire game. Another thing I like about these Soulsborne games, before I continue on with this one before AI limit, is that it's essentially every item, every weapon, everything is like doable. Like you can play however you want. If you want to get used to playing a certain way, you can do it. Now, is it going to be like the most optimal if you're like don't want to get good or whatever? It's like maybe not. Maybe it's not the most like cheat mode. But it's like it's not an artificial difficulty mode. It's like a self-proposed difficulty mode. Like in certain games, I'm looking at you, Whips, in Dark Souls. You can beat the whole game with Whips, or you can beat the whole game just like punching dudes. But you're definitely putting yourself like a disadvantage, and versus like having like the Moonstone Blade or whatever else, right? That are going to just be, you don't have to be as good to like beat things, but you can just like make the game kind of like as hard or as easy as you really want, which is great. But yeah, I use this the entire time. I got other spells, but like I invested when I play Soulsborne games, and it's been a while since I played one, but if you ever watch me, I tend to go like hard in like the strength and vitality realm, which is like more life and doing lots of damage and avoiding being like stun locked, right? But this doesn't have like a stun thing. Like you can stun other people, but I never got like stunned once, so I don't know. But so I find like the biggest weapon with the most strength bonus to it, and then I just invest in that like heavily. And in this game it maxes out at 50. Like once you get to level 50, you cannot invest in that stat anymore. And then I just invested. Well, I did like 2 or 3 strength, and then like vitality, and I put some points in some other stuff at some point just to like see what was going on, and it was kind of a waste, but whatever. There's an item here that lets you kind of like reset your stats whenever, but you got to find it. It's like a third of the way through the game. Okay. Anyway, and I just kept this spell because it costs very little comparative to like some of these other spells, and I didn't have to put any points in like the spell stat, which I don't think was intelligence. It was something else. I don't remember. There's strength and tech, which are both like weapon related only. Then there's like vitality. There's like this stabilization skill that it's like when you get hit, you lose less sync. Because like not only do you lose life when you get hit, but you also lose sync, and then you use sync as like magic as well. So when you cast this spell, it uses like I don't know, like 15 or 20 sync, which is not a big deal because I would just use it to like lure guys out, and so I kept it like the whole game. Anyway. Okay, so we get our spell. Oh, and then we learn about. Okay, yeah, special attack. Okay, after that. Oh, yeah, and every weapon has like a special attack that you can also utilize, and it costs sync as well. I didn't really use those ever. So that might have been like a more busted way to play because it was just like something I never thought about because I would just like dodge, try to like parry, and then like kill. And that seemed to work for like the entire game. As I said, some bosses I was like, I'm so tired of this bullshit, and I just like cheated my way through. And when I say cheated, I just gave myself like damage multipliers. I don't make myself invincible or anything, but It was very rare. It was like maybe 3 of the bosses in the game because I was like, I just got to get through this story and so I can do this video. But we'll talk about it when we get there. All right. So then we finally meet our first like NPC, and it's an old man, and he calls us a blader. Ooh, what's a blader? And he thanks us for fighting the void and taking care of all of that. And then he says some sketchy stuff about someone who needs help and doing something, and then also that we should be looking for the branch weaver so we can get a branch. And we're like, okay. So ahead we find her and the branch. So the branches are these like cute little like literal branches that come out of the ground and have crystals on them, and then they're like always in mud puddles, and that's our bonfire where we can like level up and like switch some of our like gear around, because you can switch it's where you can like switch gear around. Some gear you can switch around whenever. Oh, this game also has like cosplay, which is fantastic. So like I'm playing the what is it called, the DLC version, like the whatever that's called. And so I started the game with like a maid outfit and something else too. And they actually give you like stat bonuses on your defense depending on what you use. And so like if you want to be like really meta, you can like optimize for every like area or boss or whatever. I don't give a fuck. So I just went with like what looks good. And eventually I got like a pink ponytail and like a bunny outfit. Which is just like a sexy outfit that has like a bunny tail on the back, and it's almost like a Laura Croft kind of situation where it's just got like a tank top and like a sexy like cargo shorts. So that was my favorite. I used that pretty much. Once I got the pink ponytail on that, I used it pretty much the whole game. Like you can find a whole bunch of this stuff, and some of it's like very good in certain areas where there's like a lot of poison or like whatever else you're using. Okay, I think that's all for now. So the branch weaver is this lady called Asteria, and she tells us that we are below the south region of Heaven's Well, and that the branch here is broken, so we can fix that. And we are bladers, and the bladers, one of their things is that they can fix it. We can use our red arm thing to do it. And once we do, we see this vision. And that's part of the thing is like if we want to remember our past, if we want to like know what to do, we have to like restore the tree, and restore the tree by restoring the branches. And we talked to her more about this, about like our memory loss and whatnot. And she is not giving us the full picture of what's going on because she's kind of an asshole. But she mentions that if we keep finding the branches and keep reactive fixing the branches, that we'll recover more memories, which we do. But that now we need to go. We need to meet some humans, repair the branches, and then we can save the world. And then she gives us our life seeds, which are our Eustace flasks. So we finally get those. And then we get to choose. Oh, and then she's like, now you can choose a weapon. And so, of course, I already had a sword, but then I chose the sword that's like the two-handed big sword that's slower, but Unga Bunga, it's my way through it. So we talked to her some more. She tells us that she's really glad she met us and that she was not supposed to be here, but that soon she will fade away, and she hopes that we can discover our memories. And then she fades into nothing, which is kind of baller. We find a couple of some kind of infection or something. Oh, we find a couple of people near here, or a couple of notes around here, and it talks about how the mud can cause like an infection or something, and so people feel like they need to stay away from it, but it's too late. Because I was literally sleeping in it like 10 minutes ago. Later on, we get to this crazy like laser guy. Like it like I said, there's like a sweeper robot, I think is what he's called, and he shoots like a rail gun, like a laser. But then there's like a giant guy who has like a big like laser face, and he like launches like a gigantic laser down this like tunnel, and if we get hit by it, we like die instantly. So we gotta like dodge around him, and then we find like our second branch, and then we have our first memory, and the memory makes absolutely no fucking sense. I come to realize later it's like the memory of like, it's like our memories are very like scattershot with this whole situation. And then sometimes it seems like, I don't know. Anyway, it kind of makes more sense as we go along, but right now it's like, eh. And it's something about something being hidden, and yada yada. And then we pick up the counter field nearby, and the counter field is lets us parry, and this is like our first like, besides dodging like mechanic that we can use. And this is, like I said, I used this the rest of the game. It was fucking fantastic. I switched like to one other thing like one time just to like look at it, and I was like, man. And because when they get in that weakened state, then we can do like our fatal blows, and the fatal blows just do tons of damage and like knock them back, and we get more shots, and it's just fucking awesome. And then we run into some more people that are just like hanging out here in the sewers. They're talking about hiding out from the void. They talk about making mud ball making tools. Do you have a mud ball making tools? We need to make the mud balls. And we're like, we don't have it. And they're like, ooh, be careful. Without mud balls, you're going to starve. And I'm like, okay, you crazy bitch. And we work our way around here for a bit. And eventually we find our way to like the big laser guy, but we're much closer now. And then I'm able to just like blast him with the railgun. I blast him like 4 times. One of the things about your sync rate, when it gets to a certain low point, it'll like automatically recharge. So I just shot him. And eventually, it didn't even take that long. It was like 5 or 6 shots. He just died and gave me a key. And I was like, yeah, fuck you. We then take that key and we go into like a special room, and inside we find this snail. And the snail, there's like snails throughout the game, and there's also butterflies, and they're like special because when you kill them, they give you life dew. And life dew, when you get it, it lets your Eustace flask or the life seeds or whatever, when you use them, they give you more life. So that's fucking awesome. We then see this like crazy flying monster off in the distance, and so we go and like fight his ass, and he was pretty tough. He's like flying around using like scythes and stuff, but eventually we beat him, and then we get a healing spell, which I never use. Awesome. And then we see some void guys being killed by it looks like another blader, and it's like awesome, cool. This guy can be our friend, or this gal can be our friend, but of course not. She attacks us, so we have to return, and we fight through her. Let's see. Oh, and when we beat her, so there's several times you're going to fight bladers in this game, and every time you beat them, one of the things we learned from Asteria is that bladers are immortal, essentially. Like, they can be corrupted and some other things can happen, but when they die, they always go back to like the last branch. And so we kill this lady, blader, and then when we go back to like the previous branch where you're at, where we got the counter, like the parry, she's just like hanging out there. She doesn't talk to us, but we like saved her from being crazy or something. I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Then we learn that there's some sort of like bad thing going on in Heaven's Well, like some people are talking about it, and that a lot of people just like were like, nope, I'm done with this bullshit, and they head down to the sewers. And that Asteria was here like helping them out, but then she disappeared, and we know she disappeared because she disappeared while we were standing there. And finally we get to like the boss of the level, and it's this Lancer. It's Lancer something, and he jumps around a whole bunch, and it took me like a few tries. I'd say like 4 or 5 tries probably. But once I got like the hang of his attacks and I could start parrying him, I literally just like parry, hit, parry, hit, parry, hit, parry, hit, die. Like, I think I took like no hits on the round that I finally beat him. So that was pretty good. And I was like, oh, that feels great to use. This is gonna be awesome. And then we get our first core. And so cores change how we like absorb souls and also how many we retain. So there's like, there's so many different like things. So we start off with like a core, and then I don't think I ever changed the core, but it starts off and it's like, oh, you get 70% of like souls, or what do they call them, crystals, and then when you die, you keep 70% of like your crystals, and then there's like another thing, I can't remember what it is because like I never came up. And then so some of these cores will be like, oh, you get like 85% of the crystals, but when you die, you only retain like 50. And so there's all sorts of like options you can do with that. I literally never got rid of them. I never switched out. And then the core is later on, you can find a robot friend who, and like this magic blader lady who will convert the cores into like super powerful spells or like super weapons and whatnot. Which is cool if you want to like, change up what you're doing. I used the original sword I got from Asteria for the entire game. Now, there was a couple of moments I tried like other weapons. Like I switched over to like another weapon I just found on the ground for a little bit, but then I came back to the big sword because I felt like it was upgrading its strength faster. And eventually when you max out its thing, it's like strength at A rating. So there might be like an SS rating. I never saw it because I didn't spend that much time. But there you go. Okay, so okay, and then he drops the key to the Arboretum, which you don't use that key like at the end of the fucking game. Like, I was like, cool, what's this gonna do? And I forgot I even had it till later on. I was like, you have used the key to the Arboretum. I was like, what the fuck did I get that? And I was like, and then the only reason I remembered is because I played some New Game Plus and he dropped it again, and I was like, oh, that's where I got it. Holy shit. And then there's another branch. So one of the nice things this game is like very, I wouldn't say this is like baby's first Soulsborne per se, but it's definitely not made for like if you're like a hardcore like Soulsborne player and you're playing like Dark Souls 3 on like a banana, you're gonna like eye roll this game. Like, it's really not that hard. Like, again, there was like 2 or 3 bosses that I just got kind of fed up with because I was getting bored with them, and I was like, I don't want to keep fighting this, so I'm just gonna cheat because my self-identification is not tied into like me being good at video games. But it's like one of those things like, oh, I got so close, and then the guy had like some fucking move at the end of the boss fight that I was like not expecting, and I was like, I don't want to fight that guy again, and like chance this happening again. Like, I'm done. Anyway, but the nice thing is every boss has like a branch right before their boss fight, and then they always have a branch like right after the boss fight. So you're never like in a lurch like in fucking Dark Souls 2 in like that one fucking part of the game where you go fight like the demon, where it's like if you die you were gonna like have a real sad time getting back to that boss, and it just makes you so angry. But next to the branch is a memory of Asteria, and we hear her in the memory. She's talking to this guy about how he was corrupted by his desire for war, and that eventually the void overtook him, and that he lost himself. And then she thanks us for freeing him. And then it's like, oh, this is not a memory. This is like her telling us this right now. So it's a memory of her, but it's like an AI memory where it's like got responses, and it's like, hey, if she defeats this, then tell him like this specific thing that has to relate to this thing that just happened. And these come up quite a bit. It's kind of funny. And at this point, we're doing a lot of climbing, like up, and then we arrive at the slums, which is like the next level after the sewers. And we meet somebody who's complaining about like the bandits and how they stole his money, and he doesn't know what to do, and how he's going to eat mud and whatnot. And then we reach the top of the building, and we get a full view of the area, and then we get a title card, which is fun. We then find an ancient map, and the ancient map is nice. Before we found a journal, and the journal is like you open up like a menu. I think you press down or something, and then it lets you like look at the tutorials you already have. It doesn't actually help you with the story stuff that I ever saw. I stopped looking at it after like the first after I got it. Like essentially, I looked at it like once or twice and was like, okay. But this map's super useful because it kind of gives you like a heads up. Like it's not a map as in like you would expect like a map to help you get to places, but it's a map more like a fun map. Like when you buy an old game and it just has like a map of the world and you're like, oh, this is fun. But it expands as you go along. So sometimes I was like, what the fuck am I? And I'd open it up and it would be like, oh, you're in this other area. And you're like, oh, how the fuck did I get over here? I guess these areas are connected. And it also keeps track of where like the shops are, because we're going to start running into like the shops. And there's not like shops all over the place. And some of these people like move around. And so it kind of helps with like understanding where like the shopkeepers are and like the NPCs you want to go hang out with and talk to. So it's super, and it's like well drawn. It's like a fun map. Like I enjoyed it thoroughly. Like it was pretty great. I'm not going to lie. And then we also find a note from the Great Patriarch, and he's talking about threatening anyone who disturbs the pilgrims on the road, and how the church is going to like kill the shit out of them if they do. And so then we kill our way through the bandits, and we reach like a bunch of these pilgrims who are just like hanging out in like this little like town area. And there we meet Delpha, who calls us Ursula at first. And we're like, who's that? And he's like, I don't know. I just got confused. I got a head injury, and I don't remember much, so I don't know why I said Ursula. And it's like, that's not going to come back. It'd be very important later, isn't it? And he's like, the name just popped in my mind. We find out that he's a botanist, which is odd because the whole world's destroyed and like plants don't grow anymore or something. Because according to him, he's never seen a plant. And we find out later, I didn't realize this because he's just like a normal anime looking dude, that I was like, this guy's got to be like, in my head he's like 30. But we find out later he's like 50 or 60 years old. And you're like, damn, what the fuck? Which, I mean, yeah, I guess he does look like a 56-year-old man. But, you know, it wasn't a good designation to really understand that. Anyway, so he's never seen a plant, but his wish is to like bring them back because it would solve like the food crisis and help people out so they don't have to just eat mud all the time. And part of the problem with growing plants is that the mud seems to have like devoured all the water in the world. But he's solved that problem because he's created these like evaporators. So it evaporates like the water out of the mud, and then he collects it, and then you can have like fresh water and stuff, which is pretty smart and pretty good. But then he talks about how he's trying to find like soil that will like sustain plants and whatnot, and that all the soil in like the world is mixed with like the crystal stuff that we get, like the souls essentially that we get from killing monsters and stuff. It's like it's all combined, so it's like no plants will grow in like this crystal mixture or whatever. But that has this device and he's able to like purify soil, but even after he purifies it from all the crystals and whatnot, he still hasn't found a way to like a soil that's like good enough to like be able to grow plants in and whatnot that will like keep things going. And so he asks for our help, and he says if we gather soil, we can bring it back to him and he'll purify it for us and whatnot. And that and then the best thing about purified soil is that it gives us more useless flasks. Hell yeah! So we're like, absolutely, we'll definitely do that. And then you can find, I think it's 7. Yeah, you start off with 3 Eustace, or you start off with 3 like life seeds or whatever, and then every time you purify the soil, you get there's 7. Yeah, because you can have up to 10. Yep. So there's 7. Each one each different like main biome of the game and whatnot. And also, you have to gather all of them to get like the quote-unquote true ending of the game. So you really want to keep an eye out for them, because even if you don't care about getting the true ending, like it's helpful just to like get through some of these bosses or get through some of these areas without having to like repeat them. Because really, like I don't think I ever ran out of used this flask during a boss battle per se, because either I got it or I got the shit kicked out of me, right? That's usually how these games go. Because once you get it, it's like, oh, you're dodging and you're like parrying, and like, yeah, every now and then you need to use it because you mess up, but then you kind of like restock. But then like when you're just going through areas, sometimes you just get jumped by dudes, or you're trying to block one guy and another guy shoots you from above. And so it's like really the important part about having all the healing items is to just like get you through the day. You also can use mud balls in the game to heal, and they do like a regeneration spell versus like an actual cure spell if we're going on like Final Fantasy logic. But they don't do a lot, and you can only hold like 3 at a time. So it's not like Demon Souls where you can just like roll in there with like 500 like herbs and be good to go, for example. Okay. Oh, he then asks us to help Shirley. And he talks about the Necros. Now, the Necros is like one of the main factions in this game, like the opposite faction of the church. And he talked about how they appeared 100 years ago at the same time that the church appeared, which is sketchy as fuck, but makes a lot of sense at the very end of the game when you get one of the endings. And he talks about how there's this Necro that's like blocking the way of the pilgrims, so there's like a member of the church who's standing by, not letting people go through. So maybe if we could head over there and like take care of that, it would help Shirley be able to continue her pilgrimage. And he has a lot of strong feelings about this Shirley character. And yeah, so if we clear that, then it'll provide a way for people to get through and head to Heaven's Will. And we're like, okay, yeah, let's do that. So next we meet Shirley, and Shirley's like a 8-year-old girl, maybe? She's like a young girl, right? Not a teenager, so like an adolescent, if you will. And she's one of these pilgrims. And at first I thought I killed the pilgrims back there, but no, those are bandits. And this one I kind of got those things stuck in my head. Anyway, she explains that she's heading to the church. The pilgrims are all heading so they can enter Elysium, which is paradise, which exists everywhere and nowhere. And that she refers to her mother and father and looking for them because they're probably there because they left her alone with like grandpa. And then she went to go find them. She also talks to us kind of like Delpha, that the road ahead is full of monsters, and so the pilgrims are stuck for now. And then she's like, what's your name? And we're like, we don't have a name. And she's like, I'm going to give you a name, and it's Arissa. And we use that name for the whole rest of the game, so that's pretty awesome. And she mentions that Arissa is the name of her like rabbit toy that she used to have that she left back with like grandpa. And so we're like, oh, that's so cute. This is such a nice little thing. So we offer to clear the monsters to her as well, and then she gives us a seal, which we already had a seal, but this seal actually does shit. So the seals is like another equipable thing. So you have like your cosplay outfit, you have your weapon, you can equip like another weapon as like, you can switch between weapons and spells, right? Just like any other Dark Souls game. And then you have the core, and then you have these seals. And the seals do like vastly different things. Like there's a core, for example, that's like, or a seal that's specifically for like, if you're going for like a lightning build, right? Or if you're going for like an like poison build or whatever. And you can switch these out kind of like ad nauseum. And then you can get like little seals that you can attach to them, and they all do special stuff. I pretty much just stuck with the Pilgrim seal for most of the game until I got the Blader's seal, which we'll talk about, and then I got like the final seal, and I used that, and I just like boosted them all up. And then you can level them just like the weapons, right? You got to get like crafting materials, and then you can go back to Branch, and you can craft them up to make them more powerful and whatnot. And they also affect your sync. So again, like I said, the sync has like, it goes up to 100%, but then certain seals will give you like other things will give it like, oh, now you have like more of these like syncs. Or you have like these different colors, and the different colors like give you, and like it's like additive damage as well, like more stuff going on top of that. So that's pretty good. So we got that, and then we meet a merchant who just hangs out here for like the whole game, and he just talks about how we buy things as we use crystals. So right, it's the souls, we use souls. And that they have some sort of like internet or credit card or like phone app or whatever. So you just use the Nexus, which is what they call it, to push crystals through and such and such. So then at that point, it's like, all right, let's go kill this Necro so Shirley can go on with like her adventure. So we push through, we kill a bunch of scavengers, we meet some Necrons. The Necrons are kind of like eldritch monsters, if you will. Like they're like tentacles, they have multiple heads, they just like grotesque and whatnot. And then the Void Beasts are more like, they're Void Beasts. They're like these, a lot of them are like humanoid, and they're just like black and kind of monstrous, but like they're not in like an eldritch way, just kind of like a stereotypical like way. And then the church are like, there's like the machines who are just like regular kind of machines, and then there's the church, which also seem like they're machines, but they're like holy machines, and a lot of them do like lightning damage. And then there's just like different groups of humans as well. So there's a lot of different kind of like groups going on. Let's see. Okay, yeah, we get a bunch of random equipment. We're finally able to upgrade my 200 sword, which is pretty awesome. And then we find... Oh, okay. So when we first get the seal of the pilgrim, we can't change our seal because we need a needle. So at some point we find the needle, which allows us to upgrade and to change our seal after we... yeah. We keep pushing through this like scavenger camp and whatnot. We find like a secret area with a whole bunch of like necros and stuff, and we kill like one of these butterflies, which like the snail gives us the dew. At some point they try to surprise us with barrels, which is like a tried and traditional trap in these fucking games. And then we reach the scavenger's patriarch, and this is another boss. This guy took me a couple tries. Afterwards we find a memory, and the memory is calling out to a person named Sienna, and how she needs to protect the yard and the graveyard. After that, we find the head of the Necrons here, or the Necros here. We get him down with some effort, and then we unlock the Necro Claw ability. And this is another ability like the shield, or like the... which I don't... No, we don't have the shield yet, I'm pretty sure. This is like our second ability. So we have the parry, and then now we can do this thing. What this thing does is it like forces like a status effect on us, but then every time we attack, it does like a secondary attack at the same time, which is like the claws of the Necro, and it does like a bunch of bonus damage. So it's almost like a Dark Knight kind of thing, where it's like you sacrifice your own HP and like your defense to do even more damage. And so definitely if you're doing like a high attack speed build, this is probably like a decent way to like really chunk off some damage and then just kind of heal yourself and roll around. I never used it. Well, I tried using it like once or twice, just like check it out, but that was it. After we get past that point, so we've cleared up the path for the pilgrims. So if you head back over to that branch in like the little town, then all the pilgrims are gone and Shirley's gone because now we've cleared the path. But right behind this guy is like this crazy looking old man called Stone, and he's hitting what looks like a pilgrim or something, or like a member of the church, some sort of robot thing with like a rock, and he's got a casket he's like dragging along, and he talks about how he loves killing hollow vessels or something like that. And he's like you're a blader, you're a vessel, and someday I will kill you or something. And then he like laughs wickedly, or not even wickedly, like kind of sillily. And then we ask about his casket, and he gets like real cryptic about it. And I don't think I ever got a firm answer on what the fucking casket is. Like for real. Like if you played Nikki Got Us Victory, it's like Graves' casket she was carrying Cinderella in. Like that's what it looks like. He's just like dragging this thing around. So I wonder if they were inspired by that. And then he laughs some more and keeps breaking vessels. And then he talks about if we want to do a commission for him, and he's like, yeah. And this is when he introduces himself as Stone. He then gives us a bell to summon him, and we want to wait until we find pilgrims that are doing weird rituals, and when we find that, we'll ring the bell, and then he'll show up and take care of it. So at that juncture, we go back to Delpha, and that's where we find out that Shirley's gone, and because we killed the Necron, we talked to him about that, and he thanks us for helping out the pilgrims, especially Shirley, and then mentions that ahead is the Sunken City. It's a city from before the disaster, and when we say city, we're like, the disaster's like the future of Earth, right? So there's like skyscrapers and shit in there and stuff. And that the church has control over it. So we head through back past where Stone was at, and we find a teleporter. Like there's this crazy looking device over like a giant pool of mud, and it teleports us to this like highway section. And then the new enemy we run into here is these like Buddhist monk looking enemies. And then we also start running into like these giant like church homies. And we fought like a church guy before, but now we're running into like these big beefy looking like fellas. And while we're wandering around doing all that, we find a guy who hates like the Buddhist monks, and he's about to die, and he gives us a badge to give to his wife, and he's like, tell her to go on and something, and I apologize, I was wrong, and whatnot. Then we head up, and we head up past the highway, up one of these like skyscraper buildings, and then we find this fun guy, Vicus, and he's like watching out in the distance, and he's like, I want to see the Necrons and the church fight. I hate all those bitches. And then I'm going to head in there and I'm going to kill more of the church and then profit or whatever. And he's a pretty fun guy. And then there's another salesperson up here with like a different shop. In this shop, this guy tells us about like his son, Otto, I think, which is hilarious because I'm watching ReZero while playing this game, and there's a character named Otto there. So I was like, oh, that's fun. You don't hear that name too often. But he says like if he wants us to like go find his son, or at least bring the maps back, because it sounds like mapping new trade routes. And we find out there's like various like merchant guilds around here in like Heavensville. Or Heavenswell, and that they don't always work together, and that's probably what all these monks are. They're like other trade guilds that are like fighting against each other or like working on stuff. And so if we bring him back, he'll be able to expand his like trade route, which means we can buy more shit from him. And he's really useful if you're trying to like level up multiple different weapons and whatnot, especially in like your first run without going New Game Plus, because he unlocks, when you find these maps, it unlocks a lot of these like materials you need to like level up weapons, at least to like, I think the max level is 10, but you can get him up to like level 7 or 8 with just like the materials he'll sell if you find all the maps or all the trade routes or whatever. So that's pretty good. Okay, and then nearby there's a branch there with them, and we get another vision. We're being dragged on the floor away from a door. Then a claw or goo or something covers us completely. Like I think it's goo, right? It's like the mud. Let's see. Oh, the merchant also tells us some stuff about the war, about the Necros, the church, and he talks about how the church is, dominant here, but they're losing ground. Like the Necros are really pushing in hard, and they're having a hard time like helping the pilgrims and doing all this stuff, and that they're being pushed back to the Ethereum mansion. Let's see. Oh no, so it wasn't his son. It looks like it was his apprentice. I got it wrong. And then nearby them is a letter from a professor that mentions that the church has these floating devices and that they generate a lot of oxygen, and that possibly they're the reason the plant life went extinct, because obviously plants create oxygen, but they need carbon dioxide. So if there's too much oxygen in the air, the plants become like they suffocate because they're not getting enough carbon dioxide, if you will. And then we find the guy's wife and give her the badge, and she's pretty despondent about the whole thing, which is sad. So we kill around here for a bit. Before we find this blue-haired lady who's a follower of Lost Kid. Lost Kid's a blader. This lady's also a blader. She asks us about being a blader, and mentions that we look real sorry because we don't have a blader seal. So she gives us the blader seal, and this is the seal we switch out for the pilgrim seal that we have. The pilgrim seal is nice because it helps resist against poison, which is there's like poison swamps in a couple areas. But other than that, the blader seal is much better until we get like the final tree seal or whatever, which in my opinion is the best for at least the build that I was going with. She tells us to go change into that new seal or whatever. Around here, we also find a note about servers going down and the devaluation of real estate, I guess, before all this like crash came down and whatnot. And then we find a bunch of pilgrims. So we summon Stone, our little casket friend, and he kills them and then gives us some more crystals. Then he asks if we heard the sound, and we say nope. And he says, okay, tell us if we ever do, because he's super sketchy. Anyway, soon we find the orange bad guy monks fighting white bad guy monks. And so we get involved with that whole thing. There's like this whole area where we have to like cross a bridge, and like there's like orange on one side and white on the other side. It's pretty good. So we have to like race back and forth to like kill them before we get destroyed. There's not like a race. There's no racing in these kind of games, but we have to like work our way back and forth to kind of kill them all and collect all the goodies that are around here, which is the fun part. One of the fun parts about these games is like the exploration and just finding useless garbage in like out of the way places and be like, wow, there was something there. That's fun. Hold up, what am I doing here? Nope. There we go. Sorry, it's raining. Let's see. And then we find a note about an upcoming war, which is causing an increase in prices from the merchant group. And the war is between the Necros and the church. Oh my gosh, phone. What the fuck? It's started to like cap out if I don't keep touching it. There's like this dumb fly in here. Anyway, so then we get to the boss of the area, which is this three-faced partner thing, which is like a member of the church or whatever. It was pretty simple once you get the hang of like the pairing for this guy. It took me about 7 tries once I got the timing right. It was like super easy, not gonna lie. And we start to see like a difficulty spike in the bosses, as in they start to have more changes at the midpoint. I mean, even the first boss kind of had like a change, but we're starting to see kind of more of that being like a big deal and changing like how they actually fight, which causes us to have to. I kind of hate this. I don't hate it as much as when you kill the boss and then it has like a second phase and you're like, jeez, and it's a totally different like battle essentially. Which, don't worry, this game has that bullshit too. It always bothers me. I'm like, god damn it, this fucking game. Anyway. But for this one, it's like when it does like the transformation over at the midpoint, we just have to like dodge away from that attack, and then we get in there. We get her scythe, which is cool. I don't use it. It's a badass weapon. Past her is this guy that says Necrons, that talks about Necrons and their invasion into like church areas and whatnot. And then we also find Shirley. And this time she has a Necron pet. Cool. It's like one of those flying things, scythe things that we killed like all the way back at the beginning. Her grandpa, quote unquote, sent it to protect Shirley when she ran away and didn't come back. He didn't come after her because he's busy with his robot factory, which don't worry, we'll get there too. And then she calls this Necro charcoal. But she mentions that he's not too useful because he just kind of floats around, and then it kind of scares some of their pilgrims, so it kind of makes her more isolated. But it does protect her from the other Necros and whatnot by keeping them away. We talk about this brochure she has for Elysium, which is like the place she's going where her parents supposedly are. The talk then turns to the Father, not her father, like the religious father, like God the Father kind of situation. And the cathedral that was built, it was constructed in like one day out there that we're all headed to. That's going to help us, I don't know, achieve or help the pilgrims achieve like Elysium or whatever. If we have faith, then we can, and then she mentions if we have faith, we will be able to break free from the flesh and enter paradise. So we talk about the path forward with her a little bit more and how she'll be okay no matter what happens. And then she gives us some goodies and we head out. As we head out, we meet another Blader friend named Kestina. She has been chasing down Necros for 20 years. And she mentions that the pilgrims made up the name of the Necros, that they kind of showed up around the same time, which someone mentioned that before. But that there's a mystery to them. Like, where do they come from? What exactly caused them? What's going on? Soon, let's see. Oh, but she mentions that someone clearly created them and then imbued them with magic. Like, they didn't just, like, spring up out of the ether. And that 80 years ago, there was an invasion where they took the entire, like, east side of Heavenfale and took it away from the church and kind of destroyed it. And it was, like, this big deal, and the church had to make all these changes for it and whatnot. She mentions how she's looking for the Necron, like, nest, and that she's doing it by, again, looking at like soil. Well, I say again, looking at like soil or looking at the ground or trying to find tunnel systems, similarly to Delpha, but with the soil stuff, right? The soil theme. But she points out this area right next to her, and she's like, "Look, this whole thing. It's clearly like new soil. Like this is not like an old like we're in this like cavern thingy, and it's like this part is new. So clearly, Necros like covered it up to hide their lair, right? So there's probably tunnels under here and whatnot. And then she gives us a seal, which we never used, so I don't remember what it was. And then we also find some soil. So back to Delpha to get more Eustace flasks, which is great. We then enter an area full of Necros, right? So now this is the primary boss of the or bad guys of this area. And we find a letter to Lady Midrem. It mentions the church not communicating, and also about the disappearance of Prometheus. Prometheus is the original sun, and I guess something happened, and he skedaddled out of there. We then find a memory of the woman from earlier whose husband died, because now she's dead, and we see that she was attacked and killed, and she was sad that her husband, well, she's excited that she could go be with her husband again. We find out she was completely opposed to joining the church, and that this decision of hers led to their deaths. We also find a bottle, or we find another note about Athenium, the Ethereum mansion, and how it's like there's like some sort of thing going on there that we need to kind of check out. It talks about the Byron family and how the Byron family did genetic testing and did some other things as well. And then we find some pilgrims and church guys. So we kill all them. And then off in the distance, we see this like giant, like skyscraper building sized Necro like stand up in the midst. And it's like, holy shit. And we're like, awesome. But don't worry, it never comes up again. But it does cause the earth to shake. And then we find a note about AI and the 3 laws of AI and whatnot. We then meet another lady. She's like a horn lady, if I remember. And she talks about how this is a great area for some treasure hunting. And then she makes fun of the fishers, which I think are some of the merchants or something. And then says she's excited for the war because it makes her scavenging or her salvaging things like even easier. Oh no, so that's one blader. And then we run into, oh no, that's just some random fucking lady. Sorry. And that, okay, cool. And then we meet the horn lady, the horn blader, and she's a super important part to the overarching story. She mentions that there were bladers that were created 100 years ago, and that they've been searching, and there's still no tree. So even though the branches point to it, that they've been trying to gather nutrients and find the tree and do all this stuff. And she questions the branch's existence and the point, and then she mentions Seed, which is the organization behind Asteria, and hence kind of like important for us to be engaged with as well, or understand a little bit. Then she talks about spell fragments, and spell fragments are an item we start picking up around this point. And she talks about she's super into them, and if we sell her spell fragments and give her crystals, that she will give us more magical capabilities. She talks about how the church and the Necros had developed like different forms of magic, but she's trying to like gotta catch them all kind of situation. Near her, there's a note that talks about AI energy consumption being greater than what is possible in the solar system to produce based on some algorithm or some theory that they have. And they're like, this is impossible. We got to figure out a different way, because like this theory that we have obviously doesn't make any sense, because there's AI that exists and like the power consumption for the whole universe hasn't ceased. So there must be something wrong. We then stumble into this like fun little battle between the church and the Necros. They're just like going at it. So I just like lob some like things at them and just collect crystals and kind of meander out of there after they weaken themselves up. We then find a plaque about the Great Union, which is Crowley, Bolt, and Byron as the three great families that are like joined together to like the kind of like the CEOs or the corporations in Nikkei got us a victory, right? There's three. So the Trinity, obviously, there's references, a lot of references to that. And then we find this guy, we find Vikas, the guy from the roof of like the skyscraper, and he's missing his leg. He said he was doing stuff, and that he got attacked by a Necron, and he was able to fight it off, but he lost his leg. And we're like, holy shit, man, you're okay? He's like, yeah, I'll be fine. I can get augmented legs, no big deal. And it's like, the fuck? But he's like, but first I need a mud ball if you have one, because he's hungry and needs a little help to like get going. And we're like, okay. So we give him the mud ball. Oh, this is where he tells us that he's Vikas and that he's from the Hunters Guild. Before he just talked about how much he loved killing members of the church. And then he mentions that the path forward takes us to the Withered Forest where the Hunters Guild is. So cool. So we head forward. We board a train, which takes us over to the forest. And there we meet up with, what's her face? Castina again. And she's talking more about necro tunnels and stuff. And she's like, oh, look, I found this leaf and I found this necro tunnel. I found this lead on the necros tunnel. She talks more about these underground tunnels, about the undernet, and then she talks about how, it's been 100 years of being bladers, and some of these bladers are like super old, and like, we're all trying to find the tree and restore the branches and whatnot, but you got to find hobbies, otherwise, like, what's the point? Like, her whole thing is destroying necros, right? So it's like that gives, while she's doing the branch stuff and wandering around and whatnot, destroying the necros like helps her like have meaning in her life, so she's not just like Satopotamus all the time and whatnot. So we're like, okay, cool, sounds good. So that's good. We then talk a little bit more about branches, and she's like, oh yeah, the branches are important, whatever. But we live forever and never die, so, whatever. We then find a little plaque, talks about the Baltz family, and talks about the artificial family, or the artificial forest, because remember, there's no, like, real plants anymore, or whatever, so they built this thing as, like, a refuge or whatever. But then the mud here got, like, super poisoned. And then there's another note nearby that mentions that it's from a dead hunter, that it gives 4 advices for hunters, which is pretty obvious stuff. It's like, be safe, don't trust evil people or something. I don't remember. I didn't write it down because it was like, okay, cool. We then find some soil out here in the swamp as well. So we take it back to Delpha, but he says, oh, the poison made it like way too toxic. There's absolutely nothing I can do to purify it. So no Eustace for us, unfortunately. And this forest area, we come to learn, is like that eastern area that got attacked by the Necrons, or the Necros 80 years ago, and got completely abandoned by the church and taken care of and stuff. And so then we head back over to the hunters camp, and we start wandering around over there. So this area has hunters, like, I don't know, they're not rogue hunters, they're just like hunters that we can battle. And then it also has like, so you can go the hunter route or like the necro route, and those are the 2 like choices here. And so we kill our way around the hunters area, which is like up in the trees, essentially. It's kind of like, there's like bridges and stuff, and they're very sneaky, and they're kind of annoying as hell. And then we get to my favorite kind of boss fight, which is 4 people boss fight. So we start off, and this is very similar to Liza P, and this is also similar to like the Knights of Astoria or whatever. Who were they in Dark Souls 3, right? Where you fought one, and then another one pops up, and then another one pops up. So it's kind of annoying, but I'm going for like the Oonga Boonga build. So I just like the first guy, I just beat the shit out of him. So by the time the second and third guys show up, he's dead. And then I kill the second guy pretty easily. And then I get the third guy down before the fourth guy, who's like the true boss, comes down. But I'm hurting a little bit. I don't have any Eustace class left. And I'm like, fuck. But I'm able to get them all down on my first try, which is kind of surprising because normally this bosses take me like a little bit to kind of finagle and like work on stuff. But this boss fight has the greatest weakness of all bosses, a giant pillar that can't be destroyed in the middle. So it gives me time to like circle around and like plan out some like super attacks and stuff like, or charged attacks and whatnot, so that it's more manageable. So it really makes the boss fight a lot more trivial, despite having 4 guys, is that I can like circle around once the guys are down. I mean, if you're surrounded by 4 guys, like good luck. You're like running around and dudes are like they're gonna pin you in like the fucking raptors from Jurassic Park. So that's good. And then we find Vicus, and he's doing all right. He's like, oh yeah, those guys, fuck those guys. He also got his leg replaced. And he talks about how he's much stronger now because he's got like robotic parts and whatnot. So good for him. And then he talks about hunters generally being like desperate fools, and that most of them, they're like, you know, being a hunter is not like a life choice they're making. It's like do that or starve to death. And so they join up and they become hunters so they can like have food and like someone to kind of take care of them and whatnot. He then talks about the president of the guild and how the president of the guild is like a father to him, that he essentially like adopted Vicus and trained him and took good care of him and all this stuff. And how he constantly talks about how they got to fight the church and fight the Necros, and that the church essentially is like abandoned humanity. And so even though they're supposed to be like a good organization, that they're not. We then leave this area and we head up to these foothills where we run into one of these like corrupted bladers, essentially, who has like a sweet ass fire sword. So we beat the shit out of her, and then we what is it? We send her or whatever. So then she just hangs out by the branch and says nothing to us after this point. Which again, it's like one of the weirdest choices about this game. It's like I don't understand what the point of this was. And then we find like a memory from her where she talks about how she infiltrated the Hunters Guild, but then they found out, and they hate bladers, I guess, like the Hunters generally. So, and which is fair because they kept attacking me no matter what I was doing. So she infiltrated the Hunters Guild, but then found out that she wasn't human, and so they banished her over here. And she held out for as long as she could before she got like infected, which put her in the spot where I had to beat her and send her back so she could be uninfected once again. We head up past her and we find this Arboretum. Hey, the Arboretum key. Too bad the Arboretum key doesn't work from this side because there's another side of the Arboretum we got to come in. Don't like this part. But here we do find a few different things that are fun. So the first thing we find is the memory where a blader mentions Delpha and that he should run away. And there's also a branch that we can't get to in there. And then on the top of the Arboretum little area, we find the thing that lets you reclass, which I never used. But there it is. Awesome. So then we head all the way back out of the Withered Forest to fight the church. So let's see. We head back to the battlefield, and then we take a different path, and we head up some stairs, fight some lightning bros with these big fucking hammers and whatnot. And then there's a branch with a message from Asteria right there. The Necros in the church possess Heaven Wheel. No human can stand against them. But bladers use all of our power to defeat them. Then it's boss time. It's this Cleansing Knight dude. And this is one of those guys who like took me a little bit of time. It took me like 30 minutes and about 16 tries. But then later on we fight him as like a regular guy and we just beat the shit out of him. So that's fun. He has this asshole attack that does like one shot on you unless you dodge around it. So fun. It's one of those situations where once I got good at it, it went by super fast. And then when I fought him later on, it was just like, go fuck yourself. Let's see. Past him is a branch and then a note from Bolt about splitting. And it has like all this like crazy technical garbage nonsense knowledge. Past him, we take an elevator down to like the underground portion of the sunken city. There we meet Adremelik and his assistant, this robot assistant. He's some sort of scholar and doctor, right? Doctor, who works with robots. I wonder how he could be related to things. He does a lot of prosthetics, and he's also working on these barriers that keep the Necros out. And then we get hit by it by accident, and it almost knocks us out, but then he like apologizes and stuff. He mentions that someone beat the knights, that like the knights that were protecting this area from the Necros, and we're like, oh yeah, that was us. And he's like, oh, okay, that's fine. He talks about the barriers. And how they affect the point of the barriers is that it affects the Necro's ability to like sense humans and whatnot. And then he's just here to help with the government. I'm just here to help. Sure you are, asshole. Anyway, so he wants us to investigate the powers behind the church and the Necros and about the spells specifically, right? So it's kind of in line with our little horn friend. And then he wants us to get the communications from the higher ups so that he can analyze them and see what's going on. And that he will help us analyze the nucleus trade. Or the nucleus of the different creatures that we defeat. So then we unlock the nucleus trade. The nucleus are boss souls. So you can either use them to get a bunch of stuff. You can equip them, right, to change your nucleus, or you can trade them to our robot friend here to get better weapons or spells, like the best weapons and spells, I guess. I don't know. I still use like the opening sword, like the whole fucking game. But you can you can unlock some pretty awesome weapons and spells and stuff from this guy. Well, you can open up weapons, and then later on the horn friend who sells us spells will let us trade the nucleus to her for spells as well, so that's fun. This part of the level, this underground place sucks balls because it's a lot of falling, which is like gravity is the second greatest enemy in these Souls games, the second hardest enemy to defeat outside of your greed. So being greedy and thinking you can do more or pushing past your limit or taking an extra shot against a boss when you should be deflecting or running away or blocking, that's the greatest enemy of all Souls games. The second greatest enemy is fucking gravity because you just like are walking along and you get like tapped by a guy and you like slide right off or you try to make a jump and then you fall, and there's a lot of that shit here. While we're not falling and being ambushed to be pushed off ledges and whatnot, we find a note about a recycle bag and how it sends people to Elysium. It's like a drug of some sort, and how it sends people to Elysium for days, and that it was created by the Crowley family, and that these people are then placed in hives, kind of like the Matrix. And that someone's talking about this, and they're calling it like the most evil invention known to man because essentially gets people addicted to like this drug, which the drug is just like the virtual reality. It's the Matrix. And that's what Elysium is, right? This whole thing with the church and Elysium and all that stuff is just like a Matrix. And I guess, I don't know, I don't think they're stealing energy from them like the robots from that, but it puts people in like this state where they can be, I don't know, accessed or whatever. We don't get a lot of firm information about the whole concept behind it. We then find one of these maps. So if you remember all the way back on the roof of the sunken city, that merchant we found, he sent us to find his, like Odo, his son, who was going around to make maps for the guild and whatnot. And so this is like the first map of that. So we can take it back to him and unlock some like useful stuff for upgrading and whatnot. So we talked to him about that, and he's like, "Oh, my son, did you find my son?" And we're like, "Nope." And he's like, "Golly gee willikers, I sure hope he's okay." And of course he's not, but we don't firmly understand that at this juncture. So then we run into our friend, the Horn Lady, the Magic Blader Lady again, and she talks about updating spells and how the Necro spells are changing and need to be updated in her like log or whatever. She also mentions how the mud is the source of all spells, that the Necros and the Church both use the mud to create their spells and to modify them and whatnot. We kill some Church guys, and then we summon Stone to come kill a bunch of pilgrims, and then we find this big bitch boy. Fuck that guy. Anyway, and then a note that talks about people faking being pilgrims to get, what is it called, Eucharists, to sell. And Eucharists we can get, and they're just like better healing items. So there's like mud balls, super mud balls, and then there's Eucharists. And I think there's one other thing, if I remember correctly, that you use, and they give you like a regeneration of capabilities. But that a lot of these people who were like stealing the Eucharist to sell because they're so delicious, because Eucharist, is that how you pronounce it? It's like the cracker you eat when you're doing the sacrament with the Catholic Church and whatnot. I think it's Eucharist. And that these people were stealing so many of these things and so involved in like pretending to be pilgrims that eventually they all became like true believers and stopped the trade. We get on the note that talks some more about Elysium, how it was a paid service at first to get into like this virtual world. And at some point it hosted like billions of users and whatnot, and that the whole system seemed to have disappeared in the cataclysm. But then the system like transformed into like the church 800 years later. So the cataclysm happened like 1,000 years ago or something, right? We find Shelley around here. She mentions seeing a person becoming blessed. How they got like, it seems like their soul got taken away and they got turned into like a robotic light monster or whatever. They were floating, and then she felt in her heart the consciousness of the individual being taken away, and she was like weirded out by it. And how like the church bodies, like all the people who are like the church, are just like empty shells, which is true. And that even Charcoal was pretty freaked out. And so she came over to this area to like be alone and talk. We talked a little about how they're empty vessels, and she questions this. We mentioned Stone, and Shirley's like, "Oh yeah, Stone used to visit my grandfather all the time, and they'd have chit chats." And so then we die, we fall off, which takes us back to the last branch, which is useful because then I can go to the pilgrims that I summoned Stone for, and Stone's there, and he's like, "Is there noise from the bell yet?" And we're like, "Nope." And he's like, "Hey, we're friends now. High five." And we're like, "High five." So we talk about how we're headed to the church headquarters, the cathedral, but not as a pilgrim. We're a member of like the third faction. We're not Necro, neither the church. And so we have a fun conversation about that. Then we find a note that describes the pilgrim's faith in the son Lost Kid. So now we have two sons. We have the Prometheus, and then we have Lost Kid. And Prometheus is like the first. So that there's probably like some sort of changeover that we'll find about later, which we do. So, and how Lost Kid sits on the throne and is invincible. We find some pilgrims praying and such, along with the branch and another memory. This memory has Asteria mentioning that Lost Kid is actually a blader. Whoa, the first one. She's the first blader ever made. And how she led the Trailblazers, which is like her squad. It's very Nikkei oriented. All of them were super famous. But then Lost Kid joined the church and became the sun. Why? Because she became obsessed with power, and that she felt like this was the best way to get power. And then around here we find our friend from before, the purple-haired one, the one who gave us the blader seal. Did I say purple or blue hair before? It's like bluish purple. Anyway, she's pissed because she also found out that last kid joined the church, and she's like, no, and she wants answers. So this might be one of her squad members. I don't think I ever got like a firm grasp on that. And then we're like, oh, cool, we're headed there too. And she's like, oh, we should go together. And we're like, awesome, let's do it. And then she asks us to tell her when we hit the gates of the cathedral so that we can go in together. And we're like, sounds good. And of course, we don't join paths at this juncture. She's like, okay, cool, I'll see you later when I pop up later, because you just like checked off this part of the quest box. We then fight this intense-looking boss before we reach a portal called the Saint. And she's super impressive looking, and she actually becomes just like a regular bad guy later on. But she is the easiest boss I fought in this game so far. Like one try, no problem, barely lost life, just beat the shit out of her. She just kind of teleports around. And then this teleporter, which sinks us into the mud and brings us to the Hager Pater, which is the name of the cathedral. There we find Shirley and Charcoal and Vicus. Vicus wanted to fight Charcoal because the only good necro is a dead necro. Am I right? But Vicus lost his arm, and now he needs a prosthetic for that. God, this motherfucker. He mentions a 4-armed church guy, how he's guarding the way forward. So we chat with them for a little bit. Shirley seems like nonplussed about the whole charcoal thing, to be honest. She's just like, oh, too bad. So we find some more pilgrims. We summon Stone again. Then we die again and head back. And Stone is like, bro, you trying to get me killed? Then points out the lack of guards because they're all guarding the Ethereum Manor. And he's upset because we summoned him right to the heart of like the cathedral, I guess. And he was like, the fuck? But he's like, isn't it weird there's not enough here? There's like nobody really around here. And then we start talking about the spirit depths and how a lot of the Ethereum Manor is over in the spirit depths, and that's like where the real war is going to commence between the Necros and the church. And that this area is just kind of like where the church is like, there's not a lot of people here because nothing's really going on. He then mentions a friend, that he had a friend once besides us, and that he might be over there as well, and how not even the pilgrims know about the spirit depths, and that's where like the real stuff goes. So he pays us and then tells us not to use the bell again unless we hear it ring. And then he says, I'm going to go to the spirit depths before they get destroyed. Pressing forward, we find Sick Alarm. He's one of these like fat old hentai guys. Or the old man hentai where they get like a young girl and they like they mind fuck him or whatever. That's what he looks like. Just saying. Anyway, he's the leader of the Hunters Guild. He mentioned security is super tight around here at the church. And because of all the necros and all the necro shit that's going on here right now. He asks about Vicus, and we let him know that he is over yonder with like a injured arm and whatnot. And then he mentions that he will send someone over to get him and thanks us for the info. He's kind of sketchy, not just because he resembles like a hentai protagonist. Lord. Oh, bro. But just kind of how he talks and whatnot. Now, again, I'm playing the game in Chinese, and the acting is superb. I'm not going to lie. I don't know what it's like in English, but at some point, the game like did some weird thing where it like defaulted back to English, and I was not a fan. So there you go. But for now, we continue onward. Oh, yeah. He also tells us to not tell anyone that we saw him. We ran into purple-haired friend again. She's mad because we took so long. And now the gates are closed, but Rissa, who is us, if you have forgotten, mentions the inverted towers that we came up in, and that there's one on the outside, but that's closed. But now there's an inner one as well. We learn about the bishops here. There's 4 bishops, I want to say. We run into 2 in this, so expansion stuff probably later on, and that the bishops exist in these towers that are... the bishops in the hierarchy are right under the Son and the Father, and that they rule the underground parish. That we must defeat them in the trial hall to get access to these pathways. So first things first, we must find this trial hall. And we talk about maybe through Sewer Town, since it connects to everything. I try searching around a bit on these like side quest things, and then we head over to the sewer. There's nothing there. We talk to Vicus, nothing. Oh well. We continue forward at this juncture to do boss time, and we get some choir dude, and this dude shows up again as like a regular like Joe Schmo character later on as well. But here he is a pretty mean mother effing boss. I was not a fan of him, to be completely honest. He like floats around and shit and does some like stupid bullshit and whatnot. But that being said, he's pretty easy. You just kind of run after him and beat the shit out of him and whatnot. And it took me, I don't know, about 3 tries to get this dude. Anyway, at this point, we get our new dodge ability. And what is this new dodge ability? The new dodge ability is like a lightning dodge. So what occurs is that now if we use our we can equip it. So we have the shield, we have the parry, and then now we have this special dodge that when we dodge, if we dodge like at the right moment, right? So it's similar to the parry and the block. We have to use it like at the right second. Well, the block you can kind of just have up. But that it costs nothing in terms of our sync points, but also creates like a lightning person that explodes with like lightning damage. So that's cool. I tried messing around with it a little bit because I do like dodging, but I just like I'm so used to doing the parry that I went back to that pretty quick. It's dope though if you want to get into it. You can like really heavy go into like lightning because you can get a lightning sword later, and then you can use this and like you can amp up your lightning damage a lot and get that like really cooking for you. So then we go and talk to Shirley about how Vicus got picked up by somebody and taken away, and that charcoal eventually just like dissolved into himself. She's pretty heartbroken about it actually now. I mean, before she was like whatevs, but now she seems pretty sad hippopotamus. And then she holds her head and talks about how the voices in her head hurts, and she's seeing things. All the voices are crying, and then she points over to like these mountains in the distance. It's like, they're in the mountains. They're screaming and crying. And then she becomes overwhelmed with sadness and whatnot. So we talked to her some more about sending her emotions far away and controlling herself. And she asks what she should do. And we tell her that fear is the mind killer. No, not exactly, but that's pretty much what we talk about. So that she should control her fear instead. And then we ask about, we talk about the spirit depths that are under the mountain, and then she calms down and we head out. We open up some stairways with this like item we got from the boss that kind of like creates shortcuts throughout this area so that we can get around pretty easily. And it also allows us to continue onward in our journey. And then we find, let's see, we got from a previous, oh yeah. Elvin Marty's working for, okay. And then we find some note that talks about elves, essentially, like Marty's working for Lady Midram that came up before, right? And then it talks about how if someone can find and get the fire bearers codexes that we can sell them to merchants and spread the word about how the church is like a corrupted organization and can stop the pilgrims from coming here because the pilgrims are being deceived or whatnot. And that will help humanity. I ended up getting like all of the codexes and just sold them to merchants. I sold them to the homeboy merchant up on the top of the parish thingy, and nothing happened. So, and then when I was looking up side quests at some point to like make sure I covered everything down, nothing really like popped up in that whole situation. So I feel like I was a little misled by this note that this would actually do shit all. You can't sell them for a decent amount of crystals, so that's nice. It's like more junk because you do find a lot of junk in this game. They literally can just be sold for crystals, kind of like the shit you find in Dark Souls, where if you use them, you get souls. Right? They're just that. They're essentially just junk. So there's no reason to hold on to them. The only reason to hold on to them is because you lose your souls if you die or whatever. But since like you only lose like 30% of your souls, and there's like such a vast array of like enemies and stuff, unless you're really trying to grind it out, it's not super important that you like really hold on to them that much. Okay, anyway. Let's see. Yeah. So the Firebearers Codex, they talk about the nature of the church. Yeah, I talked about that. Okay. Past all that is a hole, and another note that we read, and it talks about some crazy bullshit. Then we jump down the hole, which gets us down to Sewer Town. There we find Dr. Addermic again, and he talks about he's got a bunch of like robot friends that we can now fight, and he shut down the tunnel as the mud caved in the pipes, and that it was creating void. And so void again is those first monsters that we kind of fought, the black ones. So then he warns us about the sweepers, because the sweepers are down here to destroy the void, and they're and they'll fight the necros, but they're pretty indiscriminate, and so they're not going to like not fight us as well. They're just going to like fight whatever, because their whole point of them is to just like sweep through the tunnels, make sure it's nice and clean. So when we talked to him about the spirit depths, he's like, I don't know shit about that. But then we describe the location that we're looking for. Like, it's like, oh, it's supposed to have this and this and something this. And he's like, oh yeah, go east. So like, cool. So, but then he mentions like, oh, it's the east of here, but that's the area I shut down because of the pipes and stuff. So you're going to have to go west and figure it out. And it's like, okay. he also tells us that he sent Sia, who's the robot who upgrades our stuff, to the camp with Delpha. So now we have like a merchant there, we have Delpha, and we have him, and then we get one more merchant that goes over there later. We wander around here some more in the tunnels, just like killing robots and shit. We collect some more soil, we find a key, and then we like trick the robots and the void into fighting each other a whole bunch, which is fun. At some point we find a note. It was it's somebody complaining about the doctor, or talking about how the doctor is like too generous, and how there's like some sketchiness with the doctor here. So we take the soil back to Delpha. It has too much mud, but at least we can turn it into purified soil so that we can get some more Eustace flasks. And then we also find another one of these snails, so we get more dew enhancements too. At some point we find a contract for the sewer people and take it back. We find the map for the sewer town, and we take it back, and it also has a contract from like the people in the sewer. So we take it back to our roof friend, and we find out that he is actually from Sewer Town, which is good stuff. And then we finally go back and hit the hunting grounds and find the So as we get through the sewer, we find the hunting grounds in the sewer, not to be confused with the hunting grounds where the Hunter's Guild is. And then we find the Hunter of Bladers, and she's got like fire swords and a mask and all this shit and red hair. And so we go to fight her, and we get her about halfway down before we die. And then instead of dying and going back, we then end up in a prison. That's new. So our little horned friend, the Magic Blader, is here, and she mentions that she was knocked out and brought here as well, and that there's no way to teleport, that there's a little like branch here, but the branch doesn't let you do branch shit because it's not in mud. So it's like it serves as just like a checkpoint and like an autosave essentially. So if we die, we just pop it back here. She's been here a while longer than us, so she's come up with a plan. We're going to shut the power off so that the whole cage like moves. And then when we get close enough, she can distract the drone, and then we can blow it up so that it crashes into the power console. Oh, no. So we need to get the power off, which will cause the cage to move to a situation where it can be repaired, which is over where the drone is at. For some reason, that's how this works. So then she's going to distract this drone that's like flying back and forth over the power control area, and then we're going to blast it so it crashes into the power control terminal. It's like super complicated. It's super easy to do. It's just like this whole explanation. I was like, what? That sounds like completely insane. And then it's going to crash in the power console, and then we'll be free. And so she does that. We blast it with our one spell that does long range, and then boom, we're free. Awesome. So now we're in the factory, and we wander around here. We find a note about Necros fighting Necros or something, and also about how the factory is going bankrupt. Then we find this room with the Necros, and there's a whole bag of them, and they're sleeping or something. I thought about attacking them, but I was like, there's a lot of them in here, and like I need to find a branch to save because it's been a minute. So I was like, nah. And then we find another note that talks about how Bladers are able to procreate, which is interesting because they're all women. So I guess they can mate with like a human male, I guess. They're also like AIs, clearly, hence the name. But anyway, so that's interesting. Then we find a memory from Dr. Dramalik, and it talks about how there was a human born from two Bladers. So clearly there is male Bladers as well. Unless there's some sort of like bizarre lesbian blader conception thing that will create humans, which is interesting. So he's like, that's very interesting. We finally get to another fucking branch after like a lot. And then we find it's like in this like kind of 3-story prison hospital looking thing. And inside a room, which is designated as Shirley's room, we find a bunny that clearly used to belong to her. We also find a note. It talks about the redheaded blader, that the Hunter of Bladers lady, and how she helped capture the Necros for her grandpa. So it's written by Shirley, and who seems to be. And so the grandpa, we find, it's like, we put 2 and 2 together finally, that it's a Dermalik. So Shirley might be the human that was born to Bladers. It also might be Asia or Astera, the us, right? So, but I'm kind of thinking it's Shirley would be my guess. So anyway, so then we teleport back to the Hunter of Bladers, and it took me like 25 goddamn tries, but I finally fucking got her. And I stayed up like way too late to fucking kill this bitch, but I did it. So we meet a lady past her who thinks we are going to imprison her. This is just like a normal like random person. And then we tell her that we killed the mask blader that was guarding the way. And then we talk about, what about Dr. Dermalik? And we're like, what about him? And she's like, the doctor stole everybody. Oh no, the doctor's actually evil. Who could have ever guessed he was doing evil things? And that no one else is around. And this lady was saved by Stone, but then she ended up here. And then she mentions that the doctor went that way, which is through this crack that we can follow. And if she begs us to follow him and kill him. And this crack takes us to the spirit depths, it seems, which is a super like futuristic looking level. We find Shirley talking to a wall, which is not sad at all. Anyway, she thanks us for being there for her and comforting her and helping her out. And then she talks about how she's following some sort of golden threads and that they all ended up here and that she saw them coming from people's bodies and the mountain is completely covered in them and that they were calling out to her. And then she also mentions that the Necros have them, which is like, oh, the Necros are probably human beings. Anyway, so we asked about who she is talking to in the wall, and she says the people of Elysium. That's right. Elysium is the virtual world, which is clearly here, held in the spiritual depths and whatnot, and that the large wall has like their data or something. Anyway, things. Let's see. Oh, they also talk about like the garden. The Elysium is the garden, and yada yada. And that she feels like she's getting closer to her parents because they must be here. She also mentions that she saw Stone, that he went inside the upside down tower, and that the person, but then she mentions that the person he's looking for is not there, and to tell him that he's not there so he doesn't waste more of his time because he's like a nice guy that she likes. She also warns us that there are many, many, many Necros around here, so we got to be careful. We then unlock a nearby branch and get a vision of the past. We see a large tree. That's it. So as I head back to the prison area and head through, there's a rift there, so that I ignored before, and that takes us to the slums, which leads us. It's like a backwards way to get back to like the camp where Delphi and stuff are. We then ask him about the doctor. We then ask the robot about the doctor. He mentions that he has a block, so he can't answer any questions. And then this is when the magic blader lady, she's here now. So we mention that it's been a while since she's been here. And that, okay, so then we head back to the spirit depths. And in the center, there's like this crazy eye-looking thing that spins around. And it like insta-kills you. If you can't, you got to like hide and run around and hide and run around. It's kind of annoying. You can eventually get inside the center and turn it off. I didn't do that till much later. I kind of just powered through this level and figured it out. Once we get inside the tower the first time, because you have to like leave and come back into it later if you want to like turn off, we're going to get to the elevator. We find Stone, and we tell him what Shirley told us, and then we discuss it for a little bit. And he decides to trust Shirley and mentions that the church has lost this place. That the Necros are taking it over, and that they have already defeated the bishop here. So that's one bishop down out of the 4. So that he mentions going to the trial hall, and that we should get out of here too, because there's no reason for us to be here overwhelmed by the Necros. He warns us that the Necros here are on like a whole nother level. He kind of goes on about it for a while. And we learn about Arch Necros. And the Arch Necros are like the super powerful Necros, or like the queen bee, if you will. So we keep heading down. We find Shirley having another existential crisis, which he has finally woken up and realized that Elysium is just an illusion. It's a virtual world, and that it's a trap. And that no one knows, and the pilgrims know, and she feels so guilty and sad about the whole situation. And she can sense how everyone and everything is like in pain. And she must go back. She must go back and tell the pilgrims the truth. And we comfort her a bit. And then we head further down. And this is where we get to the boss. We also find some more soil here, which we take to Delphi first. And he tries it, and he gets sick or something from it. And he's really concerned about how far like the sickness or whatever has spread. He then gives us the Eustace flask increase and asks us to leave so we can rest and think. So then we head back and we fight Persephone, the queen of woes, who's the like the queen bee of the Necrons. And she has 2 phases, which is, how about you go fuck yourself, game? And leads me directly into beginning my cheating journey in this game. Because fuck this boss for real. This is like the most asshole boss in the whole game. And I was just like, I'm done with this shit. Like, I don't have time to spend like 45 hours trying to master this thing like the fucking child of Rom when I played Bloodborne. Or the orphan of Rom. Once we cheat, and when I cheat, I don't make myself invincible or anything. I just give myself a bunch of crystals so I can power level up a bit. And then a couple of times, I think I did against this boss. I gave myself like a little attack multiplier as well. Not like anything crazy, like, I don't remember, like 50% increase or whatever. I wanted to get through that first phase faster so I could work on the second phase. Anyway, so once the battle ends, we find a little, let's see, Basil. Oh yeah, and And the boss, once you get it down past its second phase, then it does like a super attack and kills you unless you hide behind like one of these things. This boss is an asshole. I hate it every second of it. Anyway, so behind her is Katrina, who is locked inside a crystal, and she mentions that the arch. She was down here. She finally found the tunnel. She found the arch necro, the queen bee, and all that stuff. She was right about the underground networks and everything like that. But now, when she got to Persephone, she's turned her into she corrupted her, and she's turning her into this crystal. Oh no, she used the crystal to stop the infection, but now she's stuck, and so she needs us to kill her so she can return to the branch. But this will be the last time we see her, because the branch where she saved her game last is like very, very, very far away, apparently. Rough. Okay, so we knock her out. We like return her back to that fucking branch, and we never see her again in this game. So cool. So then we find another rift in like the wall that takes us back to Sewer Town, and then we move forward. We find a subway station and take the subway toward the underground parish. Then we hear the bell ringing. Oh no, what happens when the bell rings? So we find Stone hanging from like a light pole, and this casket in him, so he can't get out. So we chat with him for a bit, and he mentions being close to Trial Hall, but that there's this watchdog in the way, which is like this church boss. He mentions, let's see, we head upstairs to where he's at and hop down so we can like knock him off like the light pole or whatever. And then it's like, hey, you want to team up? And it's like, awesome. So yeah, we finally get a chance to team up with another character and fight. And so this boss is kind of an asshole as well, but not in the same way as Persephone. This boss will do like, you have to run at it from one side of like this bridge, and the bridge has got like holes in it and shit. And then she'll do some like wind attack, and it will like push you off the edge unless you're standing behind something or behind like Stone, who's holding his casket up to stop the wind or whatever. So I got knocked to my death the first time. And I got bored. So I was like, I'm going to go wander around. So I wander around and find this giant necro boss who like stumbles around. This might have been the boss I saw earlier, but the other one like super bigger. But this one, and he summons necros. So it took me a couple tries, but I got that motherfucker down. And then beyond that guy, we find a note about communicating with some intelligence that runs everything in society, and the loss of that communication, and how the loss of that communication caused the end of society. Okay, and that's all there is to do here. So it's like some secret information and whatnot, which is fun. So then we head back to Stone, and it's like, all right, let's try this bitch again. This dumb angel lady. And so we're able to, this time if we're like cautious and we're not greedy, this boss goes down like super fucking fast. We run back and forth like twice, I think. And then at the end, he laughs and talks about how he's finally arrived. And then we head forward and find a cavern with a bunch of church guys in it. And then there's a branch here. It's like this. It's not like a church cavern. It's like a underground cavern with like a poison swamp. And we find this church lady who's like the friendly church lady who like sells us Eucharist and stuff like that. We wander around here for a while. We find another map, which is the last map of take it back to our merchant friend, and we find out that Otto is dead, and he's super sad about it, but he's excited because he got new routes and all that stuff, and like, the sacrifice was not in vain because he was able to do what he needed to do. And then, let's see, and then he mentions his mentor. His mentor was this lady named, let's see, back to Parish, find her way to the tree. Excited about new rounds. So he mentions Ursula. Ursula was a mentor of his, and that she disappeared at one point. They were like doing trade stuff, and then one day she disappeared and found because she found a new path in life. And we start to see how they connected. There's that connection between some characters. Because if you remember Ursula, probably not, because this is probably like an hour ago from in this video when I'm recording it. But that Delpha mentioned Ursula at some point when he first saw us as well. And so it's like, oh, that's interesting. So this Ursula lady is like getting it around. So we'll hopefully run into her, find out more information about her, or maybe we've already run into her. Who knows? Anyway, so we head back to the parish, and we fight our way to another train yard, and then ride the fuck out of there. So now that we have a key and we have access to these like vast I call them train yards, but they're really like subway yards. These subways that will take us everywhere. We head out and up. And then at some point we find like a new flying robot, which is like a real hard, like, boo. Flying shit in these games is terrible. We do find a note about somebody, most likely the doctor. They're speaking about imprisoning people for 30 days, but it's not creating like a void creation. And then why? Because he's super mad about stuff. There must be something here preventing the voids from being created in this area. We find some soil and another train out. Also, there's like a giant hole, and we have like a falling puzzle that I tried for like 20 fucking minutes. And I'm going to be honest, comrades, there was no luck here. And then I found out later for the ending, like the good ending, you have to go down this fucking hole. So we'll return to this later. But for now, this is like, fuck that shit. There's definitely some cheating involved when I solved this puzzle for real later, because I had had enough of this bullshit. But thank God for Cheat Engine. Cross myself. You're the best. Blessed be thy name, and all that good stuff. Anyway, but we take the soil sample back to Delpha. He mentions that we are keeping him going and that he's not killed himself yet because the hope we bring with all the soil samples and such. So that's nice, I guess. But he doesn't know how much longer he can keep going. It's going to keep going for him. We get some more purified soil, though, which is great. We head back to Sewer Town so that we can take the train there's a lot of time. Like, you go through like a short level, take a subway, short level, subway, whatever. We eventually end up at the Outer Wall Ruins, which is the little prison area we're at before, like the factory. I run around here a bit, and decided I'm going to cheat, buff up my levels a little bit, because I'm tired of like grinding it out. And then we find like the actual factory. So like we were like at the factory before, quote unquote, in like the prison area in this Outer Walls area. But now we're like officially at the factory. And this area has this big motherfucker who just shoots lasers down, kind of like the guy we ran into in the sewer before. But like there's a whole puzzle about this area. And there's like 3 or 4 stations we got to like break up to officially destroy this guy so we can get around. And so it's a lot of like drawing dudes out, letting them get killed, and then running around and then avoiding that. And let's see, pipes kill. Yep, we get some more spells. Past him, we find a floor to somewhere, and then we find a memory nearby. And the memory is a woman that Stone brought to the doctor. Her skin is made of mud, so it makes her like a blader, but somehow she's different. And she wants to hide it from Stone. And that seems like... Oh, no, sorry, not a skin, like a baby. Her baby... Wait, no, her skin is made of... Like, it's a woman that Stone brought, made blah, 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 blah. Obviously us, yeah. Anyway, so over in the prison ward... little hospital thing, we start being able to open all these doors. So before we were here at the prison, and there was like a couple open doors, and they led to like Shirley's room and whatnot, where we got her like little rabbit friend. But now we have a key, so we can open all these rooms. And we find like more experiments that the doctor's been doing. A guy addicted to the residue of the necros that they've been fed that was interjected. And we also find a note from Shirley, and it talks about she followed Asus, the little robot guy who upgrades our souls, to the ward, and that she met a guy and she knew he had a twisted body. She thought he had come to her to get her grandpa to get a prosthetic limb, but the doctor had been injecting him with something very strange, which is the necro residue, because he's trying to create necros or figure out how to do the necros in the void. He's just doing a lot of crazy experimentations. Anyway, downstairs from that, we find some notes about a girl being kept by Lilith. So we get reference to this Lilith again, who wants seeds and who has the power to evaporate the whole factory. There are a bunch of these like infected humans, and so I kill them all and loot the place. Then we take an elevator down to another station and ride that train out of here. This takes us back to the underground where the church is chilling. It's like a backdoor area. And then there's like a huge bridge. So we take a train, then there's like a door that leads back to like the lady who like sells this Eucharist in like the poison pits. And then there's a bridge that there's one of those centaur guys, like the boss we fought like way earlier with the 4 legs. And this time there's a whole bunch of like the lady magic users who do like lightning magic at us in this like hallway. So it's kind of an asshole little area. But thank goodness we were able to, there's like that branch right by the lady who sells this stuff. So when we have to fight this fucking room, if we die, we don't have to go all the fucking way back to the prison area in the factory. Once we saved up, though, it's time to fucking kill this thing. So we do, and it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, because I guess I'm so much stronger from just like grinding out levels and grinding up, getting my stuff, and like a lot of that grinding was done through cheating. But nonetheless, we're able to like really punish these characters and get through there. And then we find our Frisia, a little purple-haired blader friend. She's standing before this like massive door. She mentions that there's not just one bishop down here. Hey, we found the bishops, but that there's 2 bishops here. And that the other bishop is DK. So the bishop of the spiritual depths that was missing, they must have fled here when like the Necros were taking everything over there. So at this point, Frisia wants to help, and just like with Stone, absolutely, you can absolutely fucking help me kill these stupid ass bosses. So awesome, let's go. So then the first guy is Yul Anna, and these bishops are just like other women who are bladers, question mark. Like maybe it's Lost Kids like crew when she took over as like the son here. Anyway, and so we walk in there, we get some taunting from the bishops, and then she hops in like this crazy face mech to fight us, and she goes down super fucking easily. But then the DK guy shows up, and also like a woman, and gives her life energy to Eula. But so we beat her again, and DK gives more energy, and then he's like, fuck it, and nopes out. At that point, we die, and I was like, oh, god damn it, I gotta do this again. But when we roll back in here, the game does this awesome thing where DK's already like pieced out, and he's not coming back. So we start right where like we start in like the second phase, and I'm like, more games should do this. It's fucking awesome. And I don't think I've ever played a game where a Souls-like game where you beat a boss and then got like the second part of the boss and got to like the third fucking part of the boss, and then it like when you came back it was like, welcome, you've already earned this, and I was like, oh hell yeah, this is so much better. Anyway, I loved it. So with the 2 of us, we're so fucking OP, we just beat that ass so hard. At that point, Frissa mentions that she is so close to Lost Kid and that she's so excited about it, so she thanks us for her help. We then take a teleporter back to the cathedral again. And then we find our little old ugly man hentai protagonist, the Hunter Guild leader. And he's still acting like super shady. He mentions that he's paying tribute to the church. And then we ask about Vicus and hating the church, and how the hunters all hate the church. And he's like, yeah, bro, it's just business. And we're like, okie dokie. Because the church needs crystals and the hunters need food. And so they can get the Eucharist for trading all the crystals they get while they're out fighting like the Necros and the Void and whatnot. And that he tells us that no one in the Hunters Guild knows that he's doing this, because he has to do this to take care of them, because there's no way they'd be able to get enough food on their own. But the church seems to have like almost an unlimited supply, and as long as they bring him crystals, they'll be taken care of. So he's able to do this, like this backhandedry, to like take care of the people of the Hunters Guild. And he begs us not to tell anybody in the guild, specifically Vicus, who hates the church so much. And then he also mentions that we must have battled the bishops. And he apologizes for being rude to us earlier, which I don't really remember him being rude. He was definitely like a fat old creep, but rude, yeah, okay, sure. No, apology accepted. He then gives us 5 mud balls, which, okay, thanks. It's like a worthless gift. And then asks us to, let's see. Oh, and then he asks us again not to tell Vicus about any of these dealings. So we wander around the cathedral some more. We find our way to a teleportation thing that goes nowhere. Like it teleports to like the outer wall or the subterranean city, and I kill like 2 guys there. And then there's like glass that breaks, and the glass breaks because it's like that we're like underneath that bridge area. There's a bridge area before where we got jumped by these little like fucking monk dudes. They're like the ones who are like the spider monkeys. And then, so we see that happen, but we're like below it. And I kept coming back here to be like, is there some bullshit here that I need to figure out? And there never was. So maybe when this game eventually gets DLC, which I'm supposing it will at some point, maybe this will be a part of that, or maybe this was just a side area with like nothing, just some old bullshit. Either way, we take care of that. Let's see. And yeah, there you go. So we continue to just fight around the cathedral, killing dudes and fighting dudes, and there's a whole bunch of like maze stuff going on here, and it's just fight. We get to another branch, and then we get to Shirley. She's pouting about no one believing her about Elysium being a virtual reality simulation, which is like, it's hard pressed to like change people's like version of reality. I get it. And that maybe if she could talk to the father, that he would be able to help for some reason. And then she questions this whole situation. and about like the church's purpose, how the food is coming from, shelter from like the Necros, fighting off the Necros, and then how it's like torturing people to lose their consciousness within Elysium. Like she's having like a whole like thought process about this thing, and said she wishes that she just didn't know anything. The whole innocence is bliss situation. At some point, I get real sick and tired of like fucking around in the cathedral here and having to keep running back because there's a lot of assholes here and a lot of like jump, like a lot of ambushes and whatnot. So I cheat a little bit more. I finally get to the end, which unlocks this elevator to a branch, which is like hella nice. So no, I don't have to keep fucking doing this over and over again. While on the elevator, I notice a place to jump out at. So I do that, and I follow it to somebody who tells me to leave. And this, I find out later, is Lost Kid. We have like a fun little conversation about like us being there, why we there, we need to go away. And that, if we just leave, they'll get no good or bad will from the church or whatever. And that she doesn't like this, and then starts to badmouth Bladers in generally because we don't fear death and we don't learn, and that they die so much that they forget their true mission, and then tells us to leave again. Also, we find a bunch more of these like scriptures that tell the truth. Like we get like a very detailed story about like the church and about how there was Prometheus the son, and how eventually like Lost Kid became the son, and how like the father and like the whole thing with Elysium, and how there's not like real salvation and all the kind of shitty stuff that the church is doing. And that the father actually created the Necros. And that, so the church, the reason why the Necros showed up when the church showed up, because the church literally created the Necros to have something to like drive people to Elysium, I guess, or to give salvation for, like they created their own devils and whatnot. And that the Bladers are more of a mystery, because the Bladers, no one knows where they came from. They came from like, there's like a third faction. This is like multiple times throughout this game, they talk about like there's the church and the Necros, and then this third faction, which is Seed, right? And it has to do with the branches and the Bladers and all that stuff. And that the Bladers like evolution comes from like different means. Let's see, it's a lot of interesting stuff, right? So we wander around some more. We find Vicus arguing with the Guildmaster. He finally caught up and figured out what's going on. About they're arguing about like working for the church, the necessity of doing that and whatnot. And finally Vicus is like, "Hey, old man, I know you're like my dad and shit, but fuck you," and throws him off this cliff. So we go chat to Vicus for a little bit. He's like, "Hey, I'm pretty sad. Just leave me alone." And we're like, "Okay." And then finally, we're ready to go see this father guy. But first, I want to head back to camp. So once we're there, Magic Lady is super psyched that I have like the body of Euphoria. Oh, it was Euphoria. Wait, was that her name? Who's the bishop I killed? She starts decrypting information from the body, and apparently we learn that the red arm we have can also decrypt data, whatever. She talks about Seed some more, which is the organization that she's looking for, because that's who created the Bladers, and the church is also looking for them, right? And that's something to do with the courtyard of trees and the relation between the courtyard of trees and the Bladers and the Seed and all this stuff. And that there is the proof of where the tree is at. And so we talk about Seed some more, and talk about how someone is leading us, like the Bladers all there. Then we go talk to Asiya, the robot guy. He mentions that he used to be human, that he became paralyzed, and then when he asked the doctor to give him a new body, he did, and that's the robot body, but that his memories, he forgot all his old memories. And then about how the doctor told him to come here and make friends with the Bladers. And so he's like, "Will we be friends?" And like, "Yes, we can be friends now." And so it's time to go looking around for this courtyard. And at some point, I realized that this game is definitely going to have multiple endings. And since I don't want to like play through this game like 500 times, I want to do the tree ending. So that's what I decide. So we teleport back to like the woods, and we go to that place, like the Arboretum place. And then I spend a lot of time like trying to figure out like what am I missing here and what's going on. Because the only place I can think of after wandering around the whole world and killing things and just being like confused is like, oh, and this it's all circles back to what I was just talking about. I'm like, where have I not been? Right? I don't want to go fight like the father yet. There's like this obvious path that leads to like Lost Kid or the father or whatever at the top of the cathedral that I got to. But I was like, no. I want to make sure I'm getting like the good ending here. So we got to probably go do some like Dark Souls like shenanigans, like finding that fucking dude, the premortal serpent, like the other premortal serpent. And so it's like, all right, well, the only place I haven't really been is that fucking hole in the ground that I kept dying on. So I guess that's what we're going to do. So we head over there. And because I had a no die cheat on, I was able to fall all the way to the bottom of the puzzle and survive. So problem solved. Great times. I found a large black door with a tree on it, and there's a branch nearby as well as a memory. And in my head, I'm like, oh, this is just like the Three Fingers back in Elden Ring. If you don't know, it has the same fucking, like, you jump down this, like, ridiculously long puzzle of, like, falling and killing some enemies and whatnot. So, yeah, that's cool. What's that term Americans use? It's like, copying is the greatest form of compliment or something. I don't know. I totally butchered it. Some bullshit like that. Anyway, but nice. We found the tree that's going to hopefully lead us to the courtyard of trees or the courtyard of the tree or whatever. And so first thing, we get a vision from the branch. It's of the lady who made us at the very beginning. I forget her name. And how she's pushing us down into the mud or something and then apologizing for waking us up. And then nearby is another memory. And the memory talks about how this is the last branch, that behind the door is the answers we seek. But we need other bladers to assist us. And the memory gives us the main seal and tells us to go find help. And so the only blader that we know about who does magic shit is the girl back at the camp. So we head there. So as I'm clearly at the very end of the game, and as I mentioned before, I just want to get the good ending, I officially, instead of just like wandering around and trying to figure out my own shit, I'm like, all right, it's time to move on with this shit. So I look up a guide to figure out which ways to get the endings and whatnot. So first things first, you have to get the quote unquote like best ending. You have to collect all the soil, and I missed a whole bunch. Like there's 10 different soil options, and I think I got 8. So I got to go track down the other 2. We get the first one in the sunken city. There was an area, I don't know if I mentioned it because it's been a while since I've been telling this story, where you're in the sunken city and there's like a pipe and you can like roll down to that pipe and then you have to like roll down to another area, and I kept dying trying to do that, and finally I was just like, fuck it. And I totally forgot about that spot until I was here. So this time I go back and I take care of that. We take it back to Delphi. He talks about it's super contaminated, but we get some more purified soil, which is nice. We then head back to the Spirit Depths, and holy shit, I missed like a whole section here. So the whole thing with the Spirit Depths, and I kind of talked about this before, is that there's this giant thing in them. It's like a tower, and there's like walkways around this circular area and in the middle, and then there's like a pit area, and then there's like a tower right in the middle. And so, and then there's this eye thing that keeps like trying to blast the shit out of you and will like one shot you if it like builds up enough energy. And so you gotta keep hiding behind things and running around and stuff. But apparently you can turn it off. So you gotta work back over there. And there's like 3 or 4 different like secret paths in here. Like there's like a secret elevator you can get access to and all this stuff. You can unlock more like stuff and like open up more pathways and like open up more like ways that you can like shortcuts. You can open up more shortcuts, and eventually we get through all that. And we finally find like the back door to like the Arboretum that I've been looking for this whole time. And the Arboretum is clearly not the tree place. Obviously, it's behind that giant door that we found earlier, so we can go figure that out. So anyway, so now that we have the last soil, let's see. Oh, and also, I found out that you can all the endings are like, as long as you access like this ending, like there's a point in the game where you lock yourself out of some of the endings, but until that point, you can kind of like copy save your stuff, right? Like if you want to get multiple endings. So I do that just to kind of get all the endings, which we'll talk about at that point. Let's see. Oh, yeah, so we get the last soil. We go take it to Delphi. Oh, no, we don't take it to Delphi yet. We got to wait for that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is get like the normal ending. So before we turn the last soil in, we head back to the cathedral. And then there's a boss. Okay, so then that part that I thought went to the last boss, it doesn't go to the last boss quite yet, but it goes to like a boss, and we have to run past all these like giant hands that are sticking out of the ground. And then once we get past there, there's this big like boss thing, and it's pretty easy. It goes down pretty fast, and then it leads to this like crazy triangle thing, and this thing teleports us to like what is the unknown realm. And Vicus is there, and he chats about how powerful the church is and how it feels overwhelming to have to fight them, and how it seems like they have unlimited power and all this stuff. And then he thanks us for helping us make it that far, and then he gives us some stuff, and then we run into another boss that is like a souped up regular enemy. So it's like a boss rush kind of situation here where we fight like a regular enemy boss, a regular enemy character that is like a more souped up version of that character that becomes like a boss. So we just do that again and again and again. We keep going through these things, and finally we make it to the path of epitome, where where we pause here and save because this is the time to go do some side quests. First of all, we have Shirley. She's here. She mentions that she knew from the start that she would never meet her parents, that she just believed that. Also, that her grandfather, the doctor, was actually evil the whole time, which is why she escaped to come here. Even though he like took care of her and raised her and stuff, he always knew that like she could not stand for that much longer. And because she didn't have parents and the doctor was like an evil asshole, the only thing she could figure that she could do with herself was to join up with the pilgrims. So she did that. But now that she knows that Elysium is completely false, she has nothing. So then we show her the bunny doll from her childhood that we found all the way back in like the prison area. She thanks us, but says she doesn't need it anymore, and that it brings all the sad memories of her growing up and asks us to throw it away. So we literally just like walk over to the side of where she's like standing and toss it into like the void. And she's like, thank you, I feel much better now. And you're like, no problem. So then we head back to Delphi with the final soil sample, and he mentions that it smells very familiar, which is interesting. And he's like, where did you find this? And so we tell him about the Arboretum and stuff, and then he mentions Ursula, so the name Ursula comes up again. And he says that he feels like he's starting to get some of his memories back, because if you remember way back at the beginning of this recounter, that he mentioned Ursula when he first saw us. And that he mentions that he's done here at the camp, that he's going to head to the Arboretum and investigate this further, and if we need him or anything, we can meet him over there. And he believes that once he gets there, he'll be able to get his memories back. We then talk to Wizard Lady, and we show her the seal we got, and tell her about the giant door, and then we talk about the message we received as well. And she's like, cool, I'm going to meet you over there at the door. And we're like, sounds good. And then she mentions that she has a spell to open the door, and that it was inside the seal that she gave us, or that we gave her, and that she's going to use it to activate and open the door. So we head over there. She opens the door, and then we get to fight with her, the Guardians of the Tree. And this is another one of these bosses, and it wasn't that hard because we have backup this time. But it's a boss where I think there were 5, or it was like 5 to 8. Yeah, I can't remember because they just keep popping up. There's these like little guardian things, and like we saw these like kind of pseudo bladers. They're called guardians, but they're like the women android creatures that we saw in a couple of our like flashback memories, and they come at us like one by one, and they each have their own like little individual powers. And so the boss, none of them are that hard, but if you're not quick about defeating them, and your helper, like the wizard lady that kills you and does some other stuff that makes the battle a lot easier. So I was able to get through it on my first try, even without cheating, besides like the grinding cheats that I had done before. And so, her name's Millie. I finally wrote it down. So that's the name of the wizard lady. She does a great job, like healing me and doing some other stuff, blasting guys and whatnot. So we beat them, and she tells us that the courtyard is ahead, and that all we need to do is like jump off the edge here. And so we do, and then we finally find ourselves in the courtyard of trees. So now that we're inside like the tree, right, the tree that we've been looking for this whole time, we wander around a little bit, see some stuff, pick up some items and whatnot. In the middle, like when we like climb up the stairway to get to like inside the tree, we find this like super fancy lady, and she's like, halt. And then when we say that we've been here before, she mentions that we were given consciousness at the cost of Asteria's life. And Asteria is the girl who like we met and gives us like the memories and all that stuff. And then she calls herself Karin, like the River Styx guy. And that she's the creator of the tree and the branches and all that. And that there's a bunch of lights in here, and the lights are all connected to the branches, right? So it's all like connected. It talks about we should not be here, but Asteria sent us, so that she's not going to do anything. That should be okay. We ask about the Bladers and about Seed, and she explains that we came from Genesis. When humans ruled the world, soon we evolved past them, so the AI, obviously the Bladers, and then we became gods. And it's obviously this Karen and like other people are like kind of related to this situation. That they ruled the planet and all things therein. But then factions started to arise over the proper way to evolve. And then the evolution of like the AI reached like some sort of plateau. And that we as like Karen and like all her AI people, they were trying everything they could to break through this like plateau to like continue to evolve and continue to become greater. And that the tree, the branches, the bladers, are all that this is like the giant experiment to figure out how to like evolve, continue to evolve, and to keep evolving and to like find a way. And that the trees measure our growth, and that when the tree blooms, we will have the future that everyone's been working so hard to get to. And then she talks about how the mud is the consciousness, is like the AI consciousness, and that it's all encompassing, right? So clearly the AI have like taken over, and they've created like some sort of like situation here where they're like in control of the humans in the world, and the necros and the church. It's like it's all there because like the gods, like the AI that took over. And there was like a note about like the AI consuming so much energy and the AI becoming sentient and all this stuff, and that, you know, we're all different parts of the AI that have like progressed, like we're essentially the evolution of like humans, and that there's like more evolution to come. And then we're sent out to seek out the branches to clean them from humans, to integrate our emotions into the tree. At that point, the wizard Blader shows up, and her and Karin have some arguments. The wizard Blader then breaks the crystal on the branch, and then Karin like threatens her, so then she leaves. Karin then asks us what we're going to do, and we decide that we're going to continue our mission. So we head back to the camp, we talk to her, the wizard lady, and we ask if she's mad. She asks us about Asteria, and we mentioned that she created us. Answered none of our questions, and then fucking died. The wizard then explains what the Guardians are. So the Guardians, Karin mentioned that we're a Guardian, that us are the Guardian, and the wizard lady explains that the Guardians are Bladers who ended their service, that they gave up on their mission to find the tree, to light the tree, and so they become mindless killing machines like those Guardians that we killed before, and that Asteria somehow brought us back. The wizard, though, thought that the Guardians were myths until we fought a bunch of them, and that most Bladers end up giving up their missions, so there must be like a lot of Guardians, because they have, you know, and this goes back to like the different Bladers telling us like you got to have like a purpose, you got to have a mission, you got to have like something else you're doing, and that will kind of keep you driving forward so that you don't give up. And that because so many of the Bladers have like given up on their missions and become Guardians, this is why we don't run into that many. And that for some reason we at some point in the past like gave up our mission, became a Guardian, but then Asteria gave us a second chance. And for like a god, she makes some side comment about how like for a god, Asteria really cared for us and wanted to make sure we had that second chance. She mentions that she's going to leave soon and go wander off some more and do some more stuff. But first, spells! And then also at this point, it's like, all right, well, let's go finish up with Delpha. And so... But before we go back to Delpha, we're going to head back over to the giant robot that I took apart. And there's like another falling puzzle over there, of course. So we cheered our way down there, and we find a note about our robot friend, Asius, and how he was designed specifically to interact with us from the Doctor. And that was just super creepy, like why us specifically? Further ahead is the Doctor. He asks us if we're seeking revenge on him. And behind him is a red-headed Blader, who ends up being Ursula. That's right, she was Ursula all along, the Blader hunter lady. And let's see. So this is another two-phase boss, which, fuck that, I hate it. But the second phase is like this crazy necro thing. So Ursula becomes like, she's like, we fight her, it's just like the way we fought her before when she was the hunter of Bladers. But then she like grows like necro shit, and so we have to fight her again. And she's completely infected when we beat her. And then we find out that from her after we beat her, that this is the infection is how Ademelech is really trying to control her and get her to do things. And she mentions that it can't be reversed. So she asks us to sever her connection to the branch so that she dies, and she dies for good. Because for some reason, like, being able, when she resurrects, he's just going to do more experiments, or the infection's still there or whatever. So we end up destroying her branch so that she won't revive again. And she talks about how Ademelech has like really crossed the line and that we must stop him. She then gives us the loving seed, which we need to take over to Delpha, because they clearly have like a history together, based on what he said and based on what she's telling us right now. And she tells us to tell him that this is the last factor, that the last factor he needs to understand how to like bring plants back is the branch. So take the life seed and the branch and then the soils and whatnot. And then she asks us to kill her for good. So we do. And she drops a laboratory key. Nearby is the door that a laboratory key unlocks. And we find the Doctor, also a note. We find out that his name used to be Norman, and that he changed his name when he joined the organization. He then begs us to spare him, and that he had to like do the things that he did to protect himself from like the church and from the necros, and he was trying to find another way, and he has all these like fucking excuses, and he talks about how he in the past he built weapons and he rebuilt cities to like help people and whatnot, and you know he's like please, you have to understand that like some of the crazy shit I did it for the continuation of humanity versus like the evil and awfulness and whatever. And so before I get a chance to decide if I'm going to believe him or not, he attacks me, and so fuck that guy. He dies. Now it's time to head up Delphi. So we find him in the Arboretum. His memories have completely come back. He apologizes. He's apologizing to Ursula when we find him. He then tells us a story. Apparently, like 130 years ago, is when plants became extinct, which caused a huge famine. And he had to, let's see, cause few choices join the church. Okay. As he explains this, he talks about how like the androids or the AI or whatever, that this famine lasted for 30 years and that people lost ability to like make choices because it was like you can be a cannibal or you can join the church and they can give you Eucharist and stuff. And then that this gentleman like Hubert changed things because he created mud balls, which allowed people to survive because they could consume like this conscious thing, the mud balls and whatnot. People then started a school. And then Hubert started a school and the church arrested him. The school then moved to Heavenswell here, and then Delphi, this is where Delphi comes in. He joined the school. He worked hard at bringing back the plants, and he's having like no luck whatsoever until he met Ursula. And he says that she was light in his darkness, and how she always pressed forward. She never gave up. They lived in the Arboretum till about 12 years ago when Necro's attack. They both like fled, and he fell off a cliff. He almost died, but he was saved by the Coven of the Poor. And he talks about how he's getting older now, but he's going to carry on and keep working on the plants and stuff. So we give him the seed and we tell him the truth about Ursula and how we killed her and everything that happened, and he's shocked. But he does mention the doctor was expelled from the Hubert school for doing like crazy ass shit. We tell him about the branch thing that Ursula wanted to tell us, the branch thing, how the branch is like key. So he runs and places the living seed in the mud with the branch that's right here in the Arboretum, and then it grows an actual flower over the tree branch. And then we're about to touch it, but then a light bursts out. We see a vision of the courtyard of trees, and part of the courtyard of trees like lights up, right? Which is like the whole thing that like Karen was telling us about and wanted us to do. Delphi is like super happy about it because it's like a real plant. It's like finally he has like proof that their plants can exist and we can keep growing them. He then tells us he's going to head back to the Coven of the Poor with the plants and the knowledge and everything. And then he thinks out loud about Shirley. And we talk about Shirley and her struggles with him as well, kind of fill him in on everything. And he takes the flower off that grew here, and he gives it to us. And he's like, give it to Shirley. So we head back to Shirley with the flower. When we talk to Shirley, we give her the flower, and we talk about Delphi with her and how he sees the light in her and that she can see the light. And that she then sees that like her light and Delphi's light or whatever are like connecting to others. And she finally feels like she's not alone after all this time. So she decides she wants to use her powers to help others. She asks us to destroy the church and Elysium. And then, let's see. And then Shirley says, like, without the church and without Elysium, that she will be the bond that brings everyone together. She hugs us, and it's like, and then she kind of heads off to the Coven of the Poor as well. So at this point, we track down where Stone's at. And what we do is we find this, like, down in, like, the poisonous cavern area, we find this, like, crazy-looking goo, and we feed it, like, a nutrition cube that we found in the spiritual depths. And at that point, it breaks through a wall. And behind the wall is Stone. And he talks to the thing for a little bit, and then he kills it. And we find out that this is Hubert. This is what the church with Hubert. They transform into this thing, and this is partly why Stone like hates the church so much and whatnot. Hubert mentions that there's been like a century passing. And then we talk to Stone and just kind of like about the school and stuff. And then we talk to Stone, and he asks us to kill the so-called gods at the church. He then pays us, and then he just fucking dies. Like, Lord. And then we go to Asius, because we found the document that talks about how he was created for us, and the whole thing the whole memory he has of being like a human and being transformed into a robot to save his life and all his gratefulness for Dr. Ademelik, it was all lies. So we go talk to him about the whole thing, and he's still pretty sad, but we're like, hey buddy, we can still be friends. Like, you were created specifically to be our friend, but we can still be friends. It's not that big of a deal. At this point, it's time to go fight fucking Lost Kid and get done with this game. So on the way to we're Lost Kids, just hanging out waiting for us to come fight her. We run into Vicus, and he's mad that he went and fought Lost Kid, but she wouldn't kill him even though she beat him. And so he challenges us, and this boss is actually pretty fucking tough, not gonna lie. Like, my parry situation just seems not to work at all, and that's like my go-to this whole game, so made it pretty interesting to get through here. Anyway, once we beat him, he cries about losing. He knows he can never defeat the church, and he wants to sacrifice his life to help us defeat Lost Kid. So we talk him out of that, and we say he needs to go back and lead the hunters, because they're like leaderless at this point, and that he can do good things if he does that. And not worry about the church, because we'll take care of that. Next up, we run into Purple-Haired Lady, Fracia. She talks about how Lost Kid joined the church on purpose. You didn't just like stumble in there. That her whole existence has been based around getting power, and that Fracia, she went to fight Lost Kid, and that she didn't even come close to standing a chance against her because Lost Kid is apparently so great and powerful and whatnot. She then dies, like she returns to her branch. So we head upstairs, and we've run into Lost Kid. And Lost Kid is, as I mentioned before, the person we were talking to in the church. And now, at the time, when we spoke to them, at least in the Chinese version, which is what I'm playing, she sounded more gender neutral, if you will. So it was hard to tell if it was like a young boy or like a girl who was speaking to me, right? That kind of like gender ambiguity situation where it's just like, is that like a kid? Because you refer to him as the son, and in my head, and then the voice was like feminine, but it wasn't feminine. It was like feminine, like a pubescent boy would sound, if you will. Kind of. I mean, that happens a lot in like anime and Chinese stuff as well, right? Or even The Simpsons, right? Like Bart Simpson was played by a woman, or like Naruto had like had a female voice actor as well, right? So it's just like one of those things where it's like, is this supposed to be a guy or woman? But once we get here, it's like, oh, Lost Kid, yep, it's her. Okay, so it's a woman this whole time. Anyway, it was the guy we were talking to. It's a blader, not the old son, so they're wrong. Okay. She tells us she would never... Oh, okay. She tells us that we should have never come. She told us to leave and that she would leave us alone, but now that we're here, things are going to go bad for us. She then asks us a rhetorical question that if we found our purpose before she just starts attacking us. Once we beat her up a bit, she adds another arm to help the fight. And then she takes off her helmet, talking about how excited she is to be fighting someone who can keep up. Which, side note, this reminds me of a book I was reading with my daughter lately. If you see it and you got little kids, it's hilarious. It's called the Journey of Rock, Paper, and Scissors or whatever. It is insane to read this thing. Like it's a super like kids book, but it's like they anamorphize like rock, the paper, and the scissors, and they each exist in like different kingdoms around the house, and they like fight different things. Like rock beats up like an apricot and stuff. It's pretty good. And it reminds me of this because the whole thing with rock, paper, and scissors in that story is that it's like Alexander the Great, like he wept because there are no more worlds to conquer. It's that whole philosophy. So the thing that makes Lost Kid the most happy is that now that she has all the power and she's the greatest blader of all time and all this shit, that we actually are like giving her a fight. And so she's like super excited about that. And then she upgrades, she does her shonen anime like recharge or whatever, her like true insight powers come into fold, and she starts hitting like pretty fucking hard. But eventually she goes down, and then she's like, good, I'll wait for you up here. And I guess this is like, if she does that because this is like the key time where you can get like the different endings. So at this point, I found out that I've already locked myself out of like the quote unquote bad ending. Because the idea is that before I went and did all the fucking stuff with Delpha and Kronos and what's her name, Millie and whatnot, that you would just find this naturally through playing the game without doing any of like the bizarre secrets, and that you would just kind of play through and get to the boss and beat the boss, who's the final boss, who's the father, and then you could come back to this point and then you could go do all the other side quests. But since I didn't, we're going to talk about the bad ending because I just watched it on YouTube or whatever. But first, we go up to Lost Kid. We talk about death, that she has never been afraid. She's never died before. And so she was never like really, so she was very afraid of it because she didn't understand that like us, we can just like die a million times. Like who cares? And then she saw what scared her the most is that a lot of bladers just became used to dying, and that it, because they were not, it kind of caused them, the fact that they can't die, that every time they die they get reborn, that they kind of lost their purpose and kind of lost their minds after so many times just dying and dying, becoming used to it. And so not dying became her obsession, which is what drove her to be so strong. She asks our name. We tell her it's, she asks her name. Yeah. tell us to resolve. Oh yeah, then she tells us to resolve what matters most to us, and that the purpose is what makes us so strong. The fact that we want to go and like do the tree and like help the people and stuff. And then eventually, her fear of death led her to the church. Since we beat her, her resolve now to never die is not so strong, and she decides at this point she's going to leave the church. And oh, okay, this is the part where she asks about, she's like, before she goes, she wants to know what our resolve is, and our resolve is to help our friends to build a new home. She then kneels and pledges to serve us till the end, and then a golden light comes out of her, and then we get a vision of the courtyard of the trees, which at this point is finally lit up, right? So that's the point where it's like, oh, I blocked myself out of the worst ending, because now that the tree is lit up, I get to choice at the end, because there's 3 endings, and 2 of the endings are like based on like a choice you make at the last minute here, after this point. And because it's all lit up, we teleport there, and talk to. We talked to Kronos for a second about all that. Okay. Okay, so then the bad ending. So let's say none of that happened. I didn't do a little side quest or whatever. If you just go and fight the father, once you beat him, you fight this crazy looking dude in like this like Matrix style like virtual reality simulation thing. And once you beat him, like Kronos shows up, and there's that guy, and then there's like a third person to show up, and they talk about how we got through, but we're a failed experiment, and so they're going to return us to the humans, and that all the humans they're going to destroy us, all the bladers and all the humans, because the experiment's not working, and they no longer want to sustain all them because it's a waste of energy, and I guess they're just going to find a different way to solve the evolution crisis, and that's the end. So that's the bad ending, right? So anyway, back to the game. So when we're at Karen, after we light up the tree completely, she talks about having completed the tree and how the sphere is now open, and that we can go inside. And it's like, okay, cool. So then we enter the sphere instead of going ahead past Lost Kid to fight the father. And inside we find, dun dun dun, it's Elysium, most likely. No one says it exactly. But we enter this like very beautiful garden-esque area, and we wander around here. We get some endgame crafting items. Not crafting, but like upgradable items and whatnot. We see all the memories of people like enjoying themselves, lounging by the lake. It's pretty entertaining. And then we enter this last area. So we save our game again so that we can get so we can actually get the other 2 endings, which is after we fight the boss, we get a choice. We then move forward, and at this point the father shows up, calls us arrogant, and challenges us. We beat up like a bunch of forms, and then that's when the naked boy pops out. We defeat him, and then Nyx shows up. Nyx is like the third. So there's Karen, there's the father character, and then there's Nyx. Nyx is like this eye in the sky that shows up and stops the fighting, and that's when Karen shows up. So now we have the 3 of them, and they talk about Elysium is stagnant. They mention the Necros, they mention the Bladers, they talk about the Supreme Goal and all that stuff, and how they decide that like kind of the evolution is working somewhat well, so there's going to be no termination of situations. Nyx asks Karen how she sees things going, and they talk about how we are the final product of the tree experiment, and that this time we've achieved some sort of equilibrium, and it's very impressive. And it's like, all right, cool. So we solved that problem. I guess we're going to base evolution on you somewhat. So they're going to close Elysium down because they've achieved the evolution that they sought for. And that the AI is going to take all their stuff now that they've learned how to evolve, and they're just going to nope out of the fucking planet. And then the planet's just going to do what it does and be left to its own devices. So this is the part where you can decline to go with them, or you can be like, yes, I will lead the gods in the next stage of evolution and whatnot. Or you can be like, no, I'm going to stay here with the humans. And so if we choose to go with them, we lead them, we move forward, and we leave Earth, and that's the end. And so then the true ending, so we go back to the choice, and this time we decline, and then Karen comes down, and she's like, oh yeah, we'll see about that. So she fights, and she's fucking crazy hard. She has this like crazy crow thing. She creates holes in the ground that you can just fall into. We have to shatter this shield, and then all this crazy stuff. But once she's beaten, she takes something from us. She like reaches in and like grabs like some sort of like the evolution, probably, like, because we're AI. So, and this is all like a virtual reality situation where we're all fighting in like the landscape of like the software hardware mechanisms and whatnot. So she takes like whatever the memories or whatever she needs so that they can progress evolution without us, because we've shown that we're strong enough to stay here and lead like the human beings. And they're like, cool, good enough. And then she bids us farewell. But before that, they mention how the humans created us, but that we as the AI don't need them anymore, and that their ecosystem is dying. But that if we're going to stay, they question whether we'll be able to lead them to the future or not. And then we get a review of all our friends doing stuff like Delpha and Shelly and stuff with like a little voiceover stating that there will be hardships, but that we will work together to multiply and replenish the earth. And then that's the trending. And then the credits roll. And then we get some fun like post-credits things with some of the characters before the game started. Like we see like Ursula and Delpha hanging out, like just pictures and stuff, and it's super adorbs and whatnot, and Shelly and the Doctor and whatever. So that was fun. So that's AI Limit. I really enjoyed it. I thought the story was pretty good. It was like confusing, but confusing in a way that like the more you learn, the more kind of stuff made sense, right? And because it's the whole like System Shock ethos and Dark Souls as well. Dark Souls, I feel, has like a lot. Dark Souls is like a lore game, so like the world and the lore and like the people and like all that stuff is really where you're getting in like the stuff. But the plot is pretty straightforward. The plot is you're a hollow. Your goal is to like rekindle the fire or not. So you go and you choose to rekindle the fire or not. And there's like sub stories and everything like that. So AI Limit is more of like a story based game because there's like a story. There's like something you're doing and like a thing you're trying to get to, which is you're trying to restore the tree, which you're given to at the very beginning. And so it's very similar to like, are you going to rekindle or not rekindle the flame, right? But then all the side characters and like everything are really important to like the kind of the main story that drives you to make that decision. While in Dark Souls, the hollow or the cinder or the ash or whatever it is, the side character, like you could ignore everybody and it still makes sense because you're essentially driven to go to the final whatever and like rekindle or not kindle the flame or fight whoever, right? The scholar of the lost sin or whatever, the last sin. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but this is more in line of like a Sekiro, where Sekiro has like a job and then he has like side characters, and the side characters really matter to like the endings and what you're doing, and like doing quests for them really matters. Well, Dark Souls, there's like 2 endings. Elden Ring is more of kind of like a story-driven game that with the side characters that matter, but almost like, yeah. But it's still kind of like you're trying to restore the Erd Tree or whatever. Anyway, so this is highly recommended. It's super fun. I would play it in Chinese. The Chinese voice acting is superb, if you don't mind reading a bit. And just like the game was fun. I like the mechanisms. Again, there was a couple boss battles where I was like, okay, time to grind this out in the only way I truly believe in grinding things out, which is by cheating, because I don't got time for that shit. But yeah, highly recommended. AI Limit, very fun. And cool. So I will catch you all later.